accomplished today, this evening. And one of the things that I wanted to sort of set the stage with is that I'm a huge fan of efficiency. I know everybody's busy. We all have lives. If we process through our business sooner, I know we've extended until 9 o'clock. And as long as we allow 45 minutes for public comment, we can stop. And we might finish early, but I just want to set that expectation that we're not pushing it to 9 just to do it. We gave ourselves that grace because this is really important work. So I hope that all of you are safe and well. There's been a lot of news. There's been a lot of things that have happened since our last meeting, but we're still here. We're still standing, and we'll work together to help Petaluma become the city that it really can be if people are really working together. So I wanted to take a moment, and why don't we go ahead and put up the slide deck, please. Okay, thank you. So this is, we can go to the next slide, please, Ingrid. Thank you. So I just wanted to quickly go over what we're going to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 hours. The first is welcome, which we're doing now, and review, ratification of the minutes from the last session. Then we're going to really focus on what bubbled up through votes and through conversation to be the most pressing and engaging topic, and we'll show you those tallies again when we get there. It's community engagement. And we're going to define what that means for the group. We're going to create a picture of success, and we're going to come up with recommendations and SMART goals that we present, that will be presented to the council. And then, of course, we'll have public comment. Okay, so next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to Martine now to talk about the Spanish language and interpretation and translation. Martine?
Actually, Tracy, real quick, if we can go back one slide, Ingrid. And then Martine, while you introduce interpretation, can you also translate what the agenda will be like? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Tracy. Hola a todos y a todas. Mi nombre es Martín Rivarola. Estoy aquí en esta noche para hacerles de traductor simultáneo. La idea es que ustedes puedan recibir en español lo mismo que se está hablando y así poder participar de esta reunión tan importante. La agenda para el día de hoy es, vamos a hacer inicialmente una bienvenida y vamos a estar ratificando las minutas de la reunión anterior del mes de abril. Luego vamos a estar pasando a hablar sobre la conexión comunitaria, cuál es la definición. Vamos a trabajar una definición conjunta, vamos a imaginarnos también cuál sería la imagen de lo que sería el éxito, ¿no es cierto?, qué es lo que estamos buscando. Y también vamos a estar trabajando en presentar una serie de recomendaciones y unos objetivos. Para finalizar, vamos a estar hablando, el público va a tener oportunidad de hablarle a este cuerpo, a este comité. Aaron?
Next slide, please, Ingrid. Thank you.
Bueno, en la noche de hoy, como ustedes saben, la ciudad de Petaluma les está ofreciendo traducción simultánea al español. Para acceder a este servicio, todo lo que ustedes tienen que hacer es, donde está el círculo rojo que dice Interpretation, usted debe apretar ahí. Enseguida le va a salir una opción que le va a decir español. Usted simplemente aprieta ahí y va a poder seguirme a mí en el audio en español. Así que con esto damos paso y muchas gracias por estar aquí. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Martin. So just a couple housekeeping items. We want to go over some Zoom instructions. So if you're joining us at the very bottom, there is join audio. And so you have two options: to use your device's audio or to call in using a cell phone. Next slide, please. For our panelists, we also have our mute button. We would like for everyone to stay muted unless they're called upon, so that we can have just friendly conversation and can have an order and run a smooth meeting. Next slide, please. And this is also for our panelists as well. Start the video. We would like to have everyone's camera on for the duration of the meeting. For the public, the cameras are off unless at all times. When you're speaking in public comment, you'll be able to speak, but the cameras will be off. Next slide, please. So this is for raising your hand. So for the panelists and also for the public, it's the same feature. So if you can please raise your hand when you'd like to speak, we will be able to call on you for the panelists, and then during public comment, if the public would like to speak, that's when you should raise your hand, and we'll reach you via public comment. Next slide, please. If you're having any technical difficulties throughout the meeting, you can either email myself at azavala@cityofpetaluma.org, or if it's Spanish, you can email Martin at mrtranslations.org, and one of us will assist you. Thank you, and Ingrid, next slide.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Martine. We appreciate both of you. The other point that I'd like to make, that I'm really talking to myself, is I'm trying to slow down so that Martine doesn't lose his mind trying to keep up with me. So if you all can remember, all the panelists can remember to slow down your speech a little bit, because this is real-time translation. So thank you all. So I want to remind the group about our guiding principles, and we're going to do this every time, but this has got to be a space for safe expression. It's really important that people should feel that they can say or express what is really in their heart. Now, of course, that means we're not going to attack others. We're not going to be rude, if you will, but we should be able to be authentic, of course. Inclusiveness and equity, everybody's opinion matters. Easy participation and equal access. If please feel free to raise your hand. That's one of the other reasons why we're doing the translation. And meaningful engagement. There are a couple of points where we vote just so it's on the record and it's very clear, but this is really about conversation and accountability. You all were selected either appointed by council members, or you were appointed or selected by various community organizations, and we are accountable for really doing this work and doing it well. And to that point, I want to mention a couple of things in general that happened at our last meeting. At one point, somebody had a question about a topic that we were discussing, and another person said, told them just to go to the internet and look it up. And that's fine if it's stated in a sense, in a general manner. But this is a learning community. This is about questions and learning and growing. So no one should be shut down. We have to be very careful that our language and our tone does not shut anyone down. If that happens, I am going to say something. If I don't say something, those of you particularly, on the committee that produces these, you have my text, send me a text if I miss it, because I'm focused. The other thing is, we want to be very careful about what is said and done in social media outside of this meeting. We have no right to tell anybody what to say or to post, but we are trying to build community at large by first creating a community here where we can have conversations. So if we're attacking each other, or there are perceived attacks outside of this, if we're attacking committee members outside of this meeting, that's problematic. It's problematic because it goes against creating a sense of community. So I just wanted to be very clear about that. And we're trying to work together, not to tear each other apart, even if we have different points of view. So let's go to the next slide, please. we're going to do what we're required to do in the very beginning, which is do a roll call for attendance so we can establish a quorum, which is at least 15. So if I might have the city's help, please.
Yes, I'm happy to take roll if everyone's ready. We will go alphabetically. Joel Brunner DeKeen.
Present.
Thank you. Liz Chacon.
Present.
Angela's Cruz.
Here.
Anne Marie Daniels. Claudia de la Peña.
Present.
Thank you. Just bear with me one moment. Ramona Faith.
Present.
Rabbi Ted Feldman.
Present.
Anthony Franklin.
Present.
Johanna Garcia.
Present.
Zaira Garcia.
Present.
Hanan Hunaidi.
Present.
Eric Leland.
Present.
Sonia Lowry. Sadie Martinez.
Present.
Julia Main.
Present.
Mike Miller.
Present.
Joanna Pawn.
Present.
Stefan Perez.
Present.
Kenyana Reynolds.
Here.
Fabian Romo Macias.
Here.
Faith Ross.
Here.
Mark Scott.
Present.
Joe Sturdivant. Risa Tinsley Green.
In this process to be
And Risa, that's you. Pedro Toledo.
Present.
Catherine Wells.
Present.
Aaron Wilkins. I'm sorry, Aaron Wilkins. Lou Zwire.
Here.
Thank you, everyone. We have a quorum.
Perfect. Thank you, Susie. Appreciate your help.
You're welcome.
All right. So now what we'll do, this is the business, the business portion of the meeting that we have to get through very quickly here so we can get to the meat of the conversation or the heart of the conversation. So the minutes were sent out from the 4/20th meeting early on, or at least a week ago, and you had a chance to review them. If you don't, you can take a few minutes now and review them. We'll give you about 5 minutes. These are action minutes. They're not verbatim. We will ask if there are any corrections, and if not, we're going to deem them approved. So I'll give you 5 minutes to gather your thoughts or to scan through them again, please, if you would. Two or three more minutes, please. All right, let's come back together. Are there any corrections? I can't see necessarily the hand, so I'll ask Ingrid or Aaron to help call on people, please. I take it that's a no. Aaron, are you seeing any hands?
Madam Moderator, Madam Webb, I do not.
Call me madam, oh please. Call me Tracy. Okay, but thank you. Okay, so all right, so we will deem those minutes approved. Thank you all. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So these were the categories that we came up with and that we voted on the last time, that the committee voted on. And the one that floated to the top by virtue of 17 votes was community engagement to improve race relations / restorative justice to reflect all sectors of the community with 17 votes. So that's what we're focusing on today. And if we need more than today, we'll go from there. The next one after that would be civilian police oversight, and we'll see when we get to that. Let's make sure we flesh this out very well. So let's go to the next slide, please.
Tracy, at this point, we did have Eric Leland with his hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. We had public comment last meeting and this meeting from Mr. Duffy to combine a few of those items together. I don't know if it's an appropriate time to suggest that. I don't think it was properly considered at the last meeting because there was some question as to what was said, but it was restated for this meeting.
So what were his concerns?
The recommendation was that civilian police oversight can incorporate and should incorporate the CAHOOTS program and police policies, which would probably be wise because those are topics that overlap, and if we separate them, we might end up talking about a lot of the same things, since they're all part of the same sort of police oversight overall topic.
Actually, that's actually a very astute observation, and we have time. Let's take about 5 minutes and discuss it. So the potential proposal is that we combine the one with 9 votes, which is police policy, the one with 12, which is civilian oversight, and the CAHOOTS program, which is 4 votes. Now that's jumping in front of diverse hiring and representation, but the number is pretty much way out. And the CAHOOTS program is really already kicked off, so that might be a good. I mean, I'm not saying we don't talk about it, right? But it's already in motion, so that might be a good step towards consolidating, so that we can really do some in-depth work. What does the committee think about combining civilian police oversight with police policies in the CAHOOTS program?
The first hand raised we have is Zyra.
Go ahead, Zyra. Hello, happy whatever it is, Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ms. Webb, if that's appropriate to call you. That's what I was trying to say at the last meeting, if we could have consolidated that civilian police oversight. And I also agree that that's it does overlap, and if we could put it the CAHOOTS program under that, as well as escalation and police policies. So I agree with what Eric has brought up, and thanks again for clarifying that. But that was what I was wanting to say last month.
Okay, thank you. Others?
The next speaker we have is Hanan.
Hey, Hanan.
Hi. I agree, but I actually was raising my hand because I had a question, and I don't remember if this was intentional, but we have 2 clusters that both have restorative justice. So we've got the one community engagement to improve race relations, which also states restorative justice, and then we have one just restorative justice. Was that intentional?
No, I think that was a miss, because we combined it. Remember, the group decided to combine it with the community engagement.
Okay.
And it really does fit nicely there, but thank you. So we should probably take that off at some point. Okay, other hands up, Aaron?
Next hand is Mike. followed by Lou.
Okay.
Hi, thanks again, everyone, for taking the time. I would definitely second combining police policies and civilian police oversight. I think with the limited number of meetings that we have, and with so many topics, discussion, debate that will probably be involved with those two, I would definitely second combining them. I would only worry about, since the CAHOOTS program is already going on us to rehash or rediscuss the validity of the CAHOOTS program that's already going. But I definitely think that police policies and civilian police oversight should be combined. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, and I pledge to you that as your facilitator, I will not allow us to spend time rehashing something that's already kicked off and moving, because there's so much to be done, right? So if it's already in place, we'll check on where it is and then move forward if the committee agrees to the other topics. Other hands. Yeah, I think Lou?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely agree that police policies and civilian police oversight belong together. They're in the same territory. But I also think that the size of the chunk of things that we are discussing, if it's very large, then, you know, how are we going to be successful in working our way through it? And so so that's just, so I just wanted to say that, and I'm happy to see like how it works out with the size of the chunk we're working with tonight, and deciding, let's say, when we move on to the next one, if we need to split things apart or keep them together based on, you know, how effective it is to work on something that like represents like a huge chunk of things to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Well stated, and appreciate that, because I think that boils down to the conversation, right, that comes out under each of these topics. If they're so broad that it's not actionable, if we can't make smart goals from it, then we have to chop it into doable pieces. So I think we will be very mindful of that. So thank you. Any other hands up, Aaron?
Yes, the next one is Angeles.
Okay, hello.
Yes, I was actually wondering if it was too late to change a vote.
Yes,
Okay.
but we can hear your opinion. I mean, go ahead, share your thoughts.
Yeah, so my name is Angeles Cruz, and I work for COTS Committee of the Shelterless in Petaluma, and I wanted to change one of my votes to diverse housing opportunities, but I understand that that's too late of a move. And then I just wanted to agree with what Lou said.
Mm-hmm. So. Being careful about making sure we're able to really have substantive conversation and not taking on too much. Okay. And to your point about the diverse, where is diverse housing on here? There it is. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. You know what? I think, Angeles, that there is a way, hint, hint.
Or could we add it to diverse hiring maybe? And like, I don't know. You were saying? Sorry, Tracy.
No, I'm listening to you. I'm wondering if there is a way to even bring that into community engagement.
That would be great.
I mean, I don't mean physically move it in, because I think that would be presumptive, but I'm saying there is a tie there.
Yeah, right? and that's the tie that our organization made.
Okay,
definitely.
So that's, you make sure we stick to that, okay?
Okay.
When we as we flesh this out. So okay, you know, one of the things that we asked for was for 3 key ideas, and so that can be one of yours, because we're going to record all of these.
It definitely is. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think it's very important. Okay, thank you. Others? Any other hands up?
Hainan and then Zaira.
Okay.
Looks like maybe just Zaira.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron. So just to kind of to maybe clarify, I'm all for the CAHOOTS. I get that it's its own program. I just want to make sure that as an ad hoc committee, because it is police civilian oversight, that I'd like to have one of our members as part of that. So in case that we needed, let's say, data, you know, that can help us out in figuring out what best practices and so forth. I'm not saying we hash out a program that's already launched. I'm saying I'd like to be part of that conversation for any sort of recommendations and so forth. So that's what I mean by putting civilian police oversight and CAHOOTS underneath. Mm-hmm. So we have also some kind of connection if we are trying to build trust. Mm-hmm. And echo what the previous panelist had said, because we are going to need truth and reconciliation of redlining practices in Petaluma, specifically, by our city, because whether we like it or not, Petaluma has a racist past, and we need to also acknowledge that there has been disenfranchisement within the Black community, specifically of Black ownership, home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and I agree with you there as the facilitator. And I hope I didn't give the impression that I was saying we're just going to rubber stamp cahoots, because it's already moving. I don't agree with what we are saying is that we don't need to build it from scratch because it's there, but we need to see what's happening with it. And I know that the city and the, including, the police chief and the deputy chief and the city manager are very well versed in what's happening and are very open in terms of sharing data. So I think that that's a good point. Okay, was there anyone else?
And that is it at this time.
Okay, all right, so we have combined. Do you all feel that we need to take a vote to combine this, or how about if there's any dissenting voices that we will, I'd love to hear from you, but it sounds like everybody's pretty much in agreement that we are going to combine civilian police oversight, police policies, and the CAHOOTS program. This is your
Tracy,
chance.
we do have Eric with his hand up again.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I think that's was agreed to with the caveat that that we're not rehashing CAHOOTS. We're going to add value to what's going on in that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you. Ingrid, did you capture that? I'm sure she did. Okay. I trust that
she's nodding her head.
She's magic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. All right. So let's now move on to the next slide, please. And this is conversation here. Let's talk about what community engagement means. We're going to define it for this committee. So we'll capture, Ingrid's going to be capturing some of these ideas. These are not, she's just in general, shorthand, because where she's really going to be very specific is when you put forth your 3 specific ideas, right? But right now I just want to hear, we're trying to come up with a definition, this community's definition of community engagement, and then we're going to do this committee's definition for restorative justice. So community engagement can mean a lot of things. What does it mean to all of you here in Petaluma under the umbrella of improving race relations and police interaction? Let's just have a conversation. What does it mean to you? And Aaron, I'll ask for your help with the hands.
First hand raised is Mike, followed by Zaira.
Okay, please, Mike.
Hi, everyone. I think for me, community engagement really means, like you said, feeling safe. And, I know there's probably a tendency to want to focus on, hey, let's have more opportunities for people to engage, talk, get to know each other on a personal level, get to see each other as human beings and not just as, different sides of an issue, which I think is really important. And I think that's one thing that I want to highlight is that I think the more that we can see each other as people, as, fathers and sons and mothers and daughters and sisters and brothers, the more that we can engage as a community and less as adversaries. But I think it's also important that I think that last slide really speaks to it, is that if we want people to feel safe and welcome, I think we really have to address the issue of police reform. And that's not in any way saying that I believe that the police are doing anything wrong in Petaluma. So I really do not want anyone to take that statement to mean that I think the police in Petaluma are doing anything other than an exemplary job. But I still think that the overall structure, the overall culture of policing needs to be tweaked. It needs to be updated. I think it needs to address a modern day community that does have more diversity and inclusion and accepts that there are community members that don't feel safe. So those are the statements I would just like to make, is I think a focus on sort of how we can reform and create a police that is more policing by consent and doesn't feel as much as policing by threat of force, I think will go a long way towards making people of color and and diverse communities in Petaluma feel safe and engaged. And that will hopefully help us all be able to come out when it's safe again to see each other in person and connect as community members.
Talk a little bit, if you would, Mike, about your definition of policing by consent versus threat of force. What some people may not understand what that distinction is, and it would be helpful to hear your perspective.
Sure. I think policing by consent is more of a policing that recognizes that police are members of our community too, that they're just members of our community that have been charged with this immense task of trying to help us regulate and uphold the social contract that we've all agreed to. I think policing by force is policing where it's like, you have to follow my rules. You have to follow my instructions. I'm the person in control. The fact that you are not recognizing that and not complying to what I've asked you to do quickly enough is by itself tangentially a crime or treated as a crime, I think, for some people. And I think that's that's policing by force in my head versus policing by consent says, hey, you've consented that I need to police you. We both agreed that these are the rules. Let's both come to an amicable situation that you're going to start following the rules that the community has said we need to follow. So that's, I think, the difference between policing by consent versus policing by force.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I think Zyra was next.
Yes, thank you. So for me, when I think of community engagement, to define it, I think it should be defined as public safety with a public health issue lens that brings integrity, accountability, transparency, and honesty, because we need to have honesty before we can have any justice to translate into real policy change.
Okay, thank you. Others, what is
the next hand I have up is Faith.
Oh, hi, Faith. Yeah.
Faith, you're still muted, by the way.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So when I think of community engagement, I'm thinking about strategies to organize us collectively as a community, having everybody's voice heard, and all of the issues that relate to our community, not just one, but everything that affects us as a total body.
Okay. All right. And what might that look like, Faye?
You mean community engagement?
Yes, the strategies. What's some of the strategies to organize us in order for all these voices, disparate in some cases, voices to be heard? What might that look like?
Well, having all of us, like we've got this group of people, and hopefully we do represent, if not all of our community, the majority of our community, but having us organized to look at the issues that really affect us, that we feel like we're separated on.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, are there others?
Yes. The next commenter we have, speaker we have is Joel, followed by Kenyatta.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Tracy.
Hey, Joel.
Hi. I look at a community engagement through an educator's lens. I'm a 21-year educator here in Petaluma, and I really feel like a lot of these issues really come down to bursting away and expelling the idea of fear of what is unknown or what is different to us. And I think if we can engage children at a young age and be able to show the diversity within their community, within our state, within our country, within our world, I think that helps build a proper foundation to our young people, and then also to the community of accepting everyone and going back to exactly what Mike Miller was saying, is that we're all people, we're all human beings, and we need to learn to love and respect each other. But the way we do that by understanding each other is through education. And so I think schools, especially elementary schools, have a very vital role in providing that for our communities. In Petaluma, some school districts are not as diverse as other school districts. So the question for my little district on the Upper East Side is, how do we create a more diverse community within our small pocket of Petaluma? And so again, everything for me, community engagement goes back to education and building that foundation with children.
That's key. And it also matters who's doing the educating and what the material is that's being, presented.
Absolutely. And I think that's also very critical. Every 8 years or so, we come up with a curriculum adoption. All schools are on a cycle depending on what the curriculum is. And, there are a majority of researchers who, from a variety of areas that go into building the curriculum. But I think, one of the most fascinating things to me is when I was in my master's program is that we did a study about textbooks and how biased textbooks can be, even here in California, where, someone as Harvey Milk has just been introduced into the curriculum. So I think we have a long way to go. But again, it all comes down to really making sure that the community is engaged as to what the youth, the children, and if we can expel that fear of the unknown for our students, it helps them become a more broadly minded person in the future as they continue. And I will say, as an educator, I have full faith in our young people of this community that they are going to change it as they grow. And I was so happy to see that there were a couple high school students part of this committee too. So
yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I do want to say one thing to that. It is so critical that we reach the children. It is also critical that we reach their parents.
Yes.
Because you can teach children everything you want about diversity, but if they go home and they have a parent that uses the N-word or, somehow makes disparaging comments against other races or people who, have a different sexual orientation, they have cognitive dissonance, right? And they're going to go along with their family. So it's a broad outreach here.
Right. And especially if, obviously we're 30, 40, 50 years behind, but, starting today with this children of today, hopefully in a generation, these issues that are creeping up within our own community will be lessened, eradicated, done without, because the children would have gotten the education that they should have,
Yeah. Well, that's another topic.
Yeah.
Will they ever be, it'll ever be eradicated. But anyway, thank you. And I think Kenyatta was next.
Put my hand down.
Hmm?
I put my hand down. I'm going to listen more. I'm going to listen more and then I'll talk later.
Oh, come on now. You got the floor.
No, I'm good.
The camera's on you.
I'm good. I'm good.
You're okay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to make sure. Okay. Others?
We have Catherine followed by Joanna.
Okay. Hi,
Thank
Catherine.
you. Hello. Thank you. I just wanted to sort of, I was trying to put my thoughts together, but I believe Faith Ross said a lot of what I wanted to say, which is community engagement to me means everyone, right? We're all responsible for our own engagement in our community by perhaps getting involved in community organizations, or vice versa. Everyone, like businesses, our schools, our community organizations, having conversations and involving the community in that way, so that we're all having these conversations and we're addressing concerns and issues. And I know, and I think one of the problems that, of course, is happening is that I know that I used to be able to go out into the community and go to events and engage with others and have these meaningful conversations. And of course, that we're not able to do that anymore. So I'm hoping that in the future, when we are able to meet again, we can do that together. And I also remembered something that I wanted to point out, that unfortunately, the police department no longer does this, but they did used to have like town hall meetings, and they have community engagement that made it, I think the purpose was to make it more accessible so that we could feel that they were part of our community and get to know them individually. So hopefully those will come back too. But,
okay. Okay. Thank you. I think Joanna was next.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Tracy. I just wanted to reiterate what I was going to say was kind of along the lines of what Catherine just spoke about, as well as Joel and Faith as well. When I think about community engagement, I think of like literally engaging the community, like police out of their cars, speaking with residents, getting to know them. The first time I met Chief Savannah was actually at the library. It was the PCRC meeting where we heard from, again, coming back to what Joel was talking about, we were hearing about students' experiences in school, but they were there right along with many administrators in our town. And as well as the listening circles that we had this summer, again, engaging so many different parts of our community in hearing people's actual needs and I think concerns as well. So,
Thank you. All right, Aaron.
We have Ramona, followed by Stefan.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what Faith shared. I think, to me, community engagement is all-inclusive. It's all of us. Doesn't matter where you work, what you do, what your age is, where you live, what color of the skin you have. It doesn't matter. Community engagement to me means everyone within the community. So it really, to me, is a process. Individuals and organizations within a community can build ongoing permanent relationships for the purpose of benefiting the community. There's a lot of barriers to community engagement, true, authentic community engagement, which I can share a little bit when we talk about some strategies, but real community, authentic engagement takes work and understanding. So, but I see it all-inclusive, all sectors. I think the box said community engagement, race relations across all sectors. So we all need to engage to improve this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Who was next?
Stefan.
Stefan. Hi, Stefan.
Hello. Thinking about this, I was looking at the report or the survey that we all had like a couple months back, and that had some really good answers to this. One of them was promoting multicultural activities and awareness, like not specifically around holidays, which I think is really great, just bringing together the community, like everybody. And also this kind of going off of what Joanna was saying about having the police show up, be there, just connecting with the police and the people in politics, stuff like that. And I thought that was a really great idea. Like there's a lot of good answers in that survey from like hearing from people. So to me, that would be kind of promoting the multicultural activities, and especially, now that things seem to be opening up, it'd be really good to bring everybody together and stuff like this.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Are there further hands up, Aaron?
Hanan, followed by Catherine.
Okay. Hanan?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I'm also a teacher, so it was good to hear from another teacher. And I think as teachers, we do see a lot of what's going on in the community in like a very kind of hands-on way. Working with students, the population I work with are kiddos who have mental and emotional health challenges. And so often I see a lot of needs in the community that are not being met for my families. And so for me, community engagement is about identifying the needs that are in the community and then addressing those needs with services or supports. And sometimes it feels like communities are often set up backwards, that there's not the services or supports that are needed because things were built without necessarily taking into account some needs that are present. I'm also thinking about, people who are in domestic abuse situations who might be calling for help and then being told that there's really no services or support for them. So to me, community engagement is trying to figure out what the needs are and then building services around those needs.
Okay, thank you. All right.
And Tracy, looks like Catherine put her hand down, but we have Kenyatta.
Okay, hi, Kenyatta.
Hi, I was just hearing a lot of people saying about the police showing up to different events and activities to build community engagement, which is good. But then it reminds me of when we did Petaluma Boo and they came, which was awesome, but they came in full gear with weapons, hands on their weapons, right? And so it's hard, it's not approachable, right? And so speaking to Mike's piece of like, they're also civilians within our, right? They're also just community members here, but they don't feel that way, right? Because they're showing up to these community events with gear and in full like attire, right? I'm hoping that they can come without weapons, they can come in their polo shirts. And so I know that if I see a police officer, I'm always like on guard, like I'm being watched, right? And so, but if they're coming in everyday attire like all of us and they have the same rules of coming to a community event without being armed, we're not allowed to, right? We would get arrested for doing so. I think that would help build community engagement as well as just seeing that like they're part of our community, right? And so I think sometimes it's just the perception or just like the being able to see them in real time, in real life. And, you know, I mean, some of them are on my daughter's soccer teams and they come to the games with full vests on and everything else. And it's like, it's unnecessary, right? So I don't know. I think that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I think the chief is here. I have a question. If on-duty police officers are attending, you know, a cultural event, but they're on, you know, they're on the clock, do they have to have their weapons, and do they need to be in uniform? Not sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, and I certainly had a few comments and responses that I wanted to address, so I appreciate the opportunity. First and foremost, I really appreciate giving everyone on the committee an opportunity to share how they're feeling. So thank you all for speaking up and participating and engaging in this community engagement discussion. So to your question, and then I'll just make a couple other quick points for reference. Some of the challenges that we've had, especially recently, have really dealt and centered around staffing. One member mentioned that we had, you know, twice annual town hall meetings and a lot more community engagement efforts, but we really had to scale back quite a bit because of staffing. The challenge with at least the last community event that Kenyatta mentioned was we didn't have enough staff and we had to send on-duty staff to do it because of scheduling and staffing. And so yes, they are also subject to calls for service, which is why they're in their, you know, their full uniform and with all of their gear. We also, because we are community centered and we encourage our staff to be, you know, participating in community events, we recognize that as fathers and family members and mothers that their children are engaging in sporting activities here in the community. And so we, as much as possible, try to give them the time when the calls for service allow for them to attend, you know, sporting events. And so, you know, we're not choosing to go to an event and put on a uniform to go when we're a parent. They're typically trying to go while they're on duty to be engaged with their family members' event. But we also recognize it's an opportunity for us to have dialogue and have communication to try and ease some of that concern about, you know, us being in uniform. It is, you know, how we don our uniform, and part of that is kind of required so that we're clearly identifiable. But it is certainly not intended to feel like a show of force or anything else. It's just trying to be engaged and participate. And so we do use a polo shirt uniform attire for certain situations, and we can certainly encourage that more. But we also have a lot of equipment and gear that's with us, and so when we're subject to a call for service, that's a necessary part of the duty. As our staffing comes back, I'd love to be able to say that we'd have more staff and more available time to actually attend those events and not be subject to being called away, so that we can have, you know, that softer, more personable approach in terms of our appearance. So I certainly recognize that that's something that's come up. It's come up with our SRO uniforms, even though we don't have SROs right now. So I totally appreciate that that's something that helps kind of soften the interaction. But I wanted to end, if I could, with Mike's point, and that is that we subscribe completely to the Peelian principles. And Sir Robert Peel, that's P-E-E-L, and if you just do a search for Sir Robert Peel principles, you'll get a link to the Law Enforcement Action Partnership. And there are 7 principles that Sir Robert Peel in the early 1800s identified out of the London Metropolitan Police that were effective policing policies. And one of them specifically, all of them apply to today. So I want you to know we embrace these. Number 7 is to maintain at all times a relationship with the public that gives the reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. The police being only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to the duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interests of community welfare and existence. And I think that principle alone, and Mike's point, we believe in that principle. And, you know, our only challenges have been resources and staffing to do more of that. But when we talk about community engagement, we believe in our minds and our hearts of how we deliver service, that we are truly part of this community and we cannot police it alone. We cannot ensure community safety alone. It involves all of us. So Mike, I appreciate you making that point. Please take a look at the other 9 principles. They're relevant to today, and we engage our staff. This is part of the recruitment and selection process and how we deliver service to this community. So thank you for the question and the opportunity to respond to one of those comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments on community engagement? Go ahead.
We have Sadie followed by Fabian.
Okay. Hi, Sadie.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. I was just going to say that with my recent incident, I think the police being more involved and maybe following up with family members when they go through experiences. I mean, they were very pleasant and wonderful. But I was actually surprised that nobody reached out and checked up on my kids. And, you know, my kids are fine, but if somebody had gone through this and they weren't okay and they needed those resources as far as therapy or, you know, whatnot, I was shocked that the police department doesn't offer something like that. I think it would go a long way. I think that would kind of build that trust, and especially if, you know, they did more appearances at schools. You know, kids typically see, or depending where you come from, but kids see police officers in uniforms and they get scared. So, you know, having more of a presence so that they're not scared of you and reaching out when people do go through things, I think is a big deal. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad your children are okay.
Thanks.
We had another person, I think, right?
Yes. Fabian followed by Zaira.
Okay.
Hi there. I had a quick question for the police chief. And I was wondering if—
Wait, Fabian, you're really warbly. You're really warbly. It's hard to hear you.
If they could not just say, like,
Fabian, you're having some audio issues.
is this a bit better?
Try again.
Yeah, is this better?
Yes.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, great. So I had a quick question. I was wondering, I had a question for the police chief. Kiana was talking about how they show up to these community events with full weaponry. Could they not just leave it in their vehicle, so in case they do get called, they have added access when they have to leave, and just simply show up to these community events with whether it's just their regular uniform and a badge to represent what they are, like what they're representing, without coming off as a force, shall we say, or like give off any like bad vibes, shall we say. That's our terminology, but
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard the essence of your question, and I think if I could just repeat it for the group to make sure I heard it correctly, but you were asking, is there a way that they could store their equipment in their patrol car so that they could donate it if they had to leave for a call? You know, I think I first have to comment on the safety of the officers, right? While a majority of time, our interactions with the community There's not a safety concern, but we're always having to be watchful. There have been some tragic situations that you don't need me to remind you about, and so the safety of our staff is important. It's not enjoyable by any stretch of the imagination to wear body armor, a ballistic vest, the 30 pounds of gear that goes on your waist, and all the other stuff you have to carry. But they have to be ready. And we have done this when we've gotten to points where we are attending a meeting or something where we're there as a member and they're not part of the regular staffing for the day. That's a different situation. I know that when we had the host officers deployed, they had kind of a removable vest that they could go to community meetings in and not be kind of there with all their ready gear. But that was a unique circumstance because they weren't tied to patrol staffing. So we completely recognize that some people feel really uncomfortable, just in the presence of someone with a weapon, and certainly given some of the conversations in today's policing era, the concern about us being in uniform. But I really like what someone said, which is more interaction and more opportunity for us to engage so that relationship, the dialogue can come and the comfort level can come from who we are. There are people under these uniforms and they care just as much about the community and the members as you do. And that's the part I want to speak to. And just for a point of reference, if you go to our website and you go to our transparency portal, there's an engagement tab that will take you to a summary of all of our engagement programs. I totally agree that we have to start with our youth. And you'll see that there are programs there where we do twice annually a junior police camp. And we certainly want to be at the schools more often. But I don't want to go into a bunch of detail about what we've been doing because I really want to hear more about what we can do better in the future. But I certainly, for this conversation, would direct everyone there. You can scan very quickly. There's a lot of pictures that go with the different categories of the community engagement that we've done. But we've done a lot and we want to do more. And we're hoping as our staffing gets restored, we'll see more and more frequency of that engagement, and that confidence will get to a better place. I'm hopeful and optimistic of that.
Thank you. Okay, so we need to maybe take one or two more comments, and then we need to summarize, and then we need to do the same exercise for restorative justice. So are there any more comments on what community engagement, how we should define it?
Yes, we have Hanan, followed by, and lastly, Stefan.
Okay. Hi, Hanan.
Hi. I guess I want to respond a little bit and expand my definition of community engagement by saying an important element of community engagement is trust building. And so if the police are coming into the community with the intention of engaging and trying to dispel fears that community members may have towards police officers, community might ask the same of police officers. So if the police are showing up armed because of fear, it's kind of hard to build trust in those situations. I just wanted to note that.
Okay. I think that's a really good point because the visual has the most impact on us, right? It's what, for those of us who are sighted, it's what we see. For those of us who aren't sighted, there's other senses that take up that. But what I'm concerned about is, the police still have a job to do, right? And so we have to keep that in mind, that I don't know, when we talk about this is exciting, right? Because in a sense, we're almost having a utopian discussion. We're talking about an aspirational discussion, what we want things to be, but then trying to break it down into chunks and elements and steps that can actually happen and move us forward. And I just want us to remember that as we go forward, that it would be wonderful if we lived in a society like in some countries where police officers are not armed, but that's not the case in this country because there's so many guns and so much violence. So I think we just need to keep that balanced, perspective as we work through this in any of these arenas. So I think we have one more. Was that right?
Yeah.
Looks like Hanan was going to respond to you, but we also have.
No, let Hanan
3
respond,
more.
and then, well, okay, Hanan, go ahead. Hanan.
I'll respond, and I don't want to take up too much time. And I certainly agree that we don't live in the society that we all wished we lived in.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's worked with students who are in gangs and basically in very dangerous settings as a teacher who's unarmed. When we did have police officers come onto campus, we asked that they were not armed.
Mm-hmm.
Those police officers that worked with us worked really hard at building rapport.
Mm-hmm.
So willingly walked on to campuses with very potentially dangerous situations, as did the teachers, as do medics, as do firefighters who walk on to situations that are potentially dangerous. So I think if we're just talking about those community engagement opportunities, where we're having an event and we want to come, I think that that show of trust, we're all showing up unarmed potentially. I think it would help in that engagement piece.
Okay, that is absolutely well taken, and I mean, I get what you're saying. I think it's something we should consider. Right? We have to talk about all of these things. So thank you. There was another person, I believe.
Hi.
Hi, Stefan.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion that I thought of. Do you have any, like, those bicycle cops? Because they look pretty not very threatening, in my opinion. No offense, but not too threatening to me. I don't know if you have those guys in the shorts and stuff. I don't know.
Chief?
I'd be happy to respond. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have had bicycle patrol officers. Our staffing hasn't allowed for that deployment in several years. But I will tell you that with the exception of maybe wearing shorts, they have a standard set of equipment. So it's fairly consistent with our standard duty uniform, just so you know. But I understand your point. That softened approach. Look, I want to be clear, as your police chief and as a police department, when we have opportunities and we've been invited to community events, I can't think of one that we haven't been able to get our staff to. I appreciate the thought and consideration for having only the availability of sending on-duty staff rather than bringing in staff on overtime or having volunteers to go as members of the community. I'd love to do so. We are members of this community and we welcome any invitation to join any community event for that sole purpose. It's important. We have 4 major focus areas as a department: reducing crime, pretty straightforward; increasing traffic safety, pretty straightforward; improving the quality of life for everyone in the community, pretty straightforward. And the last one is community engagement. So I am really eager to hear the recommendations of, besides our town halls, besides our, community academies, besides our junior police camp, besides all of the outreach and engagement that we're doing that clearly isn't touching everyone, what can we do to improve that? And I'm appreciating all of these suggestions that you're bringing up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have room maybe for one more.
Tracy, so we have Claudia, Mike, and Kenyatta all with hands raised.
I thought you guys wanted to get out of here by 9. All right, so Kenyatta, okay, the last 3, that's it. Okay, then we've got to bring this to some points here. All right, go ahead.
Who are we having first? I was just responding to, I guess, I don't know. So I guess the calls, like having to go to the calls in uniform, I totally understand that. But I guess I wish that there was a line in which you could call to report things that don't necessarily need the police to show up. There's a lot of times police show up to things that they don't necessarily need to be at, right? And I guess Cahoots is going to help with that. But I feel like sometimes I don't want them there. I just want to report something, so making that more user friendly, right? Like yesterday I was hit with a soap bomb on my car, but who am I going to call to report that, right? There's just kids going around throwing soap bombs at cars. But when my husband was in high school, he got pulled over, got cited. He couldn't go to his basketball game that night. Right. And so, but there's nobody to call that. There's kids going around and throwing soap bombs at people. So I just wish that there was some type of reporting that was easy to do, like this is going on in the community. I don't actually need a police officer, but like this needs to be known that this is going on. And then you said like your third point. Can you read what that third one is out of the 4 things? The last one was community engagement, but I forget what that third one was.
Improve the quality of life for community.
Yeah. So then I was thinking of one of my things is thinking about like the last homeless raid that we just had, right? And I drove past at like 8 in the morning after dropping my kids off at school, and there are like tons of cop cars and cops out and whatever, but it's like that is not inclusive of everybody, and it's not keeping everybody safe, right? Like they're shelterless, and so I feel like the shelterless are being penalized, and I feel like that's not very community or like, I guess, focused. So just, I guess we're penalizing the poor, and so it's hard to see whole encampment just come and you just see the bulldozers and all of that stuff, and I don't know if that's hitting point number 3 that you just read, but I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think Claudia was next.
Sorry for talking fast too.
That's okay. I know I'm going to get pinged by Martine. Tracy, you're going to get me in trouble. Anyway, go ahead, Claudia.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I first of all want to say I agree and appreciate, I appreciate what all the panelists have shared. I just want to drop just a little seed, and maybe this is just me. We started out talking about community engagement, and then for me, it kind of shifted to police engagement or police engagement with the community. And we do need to talk about that. And we do need to come up with, some ideas for our police department being able to engage more comfortably with the community. But I just think that when I think of community engagement, I'm thinking about things like the listening circles or this panel here, where we have people from the community who are open-minded enough, who are interested enough, who are curious enough, and who are looking for solutions for their neighbors and for, community members, people that they live in community with. And so I just think that for me, community engagement has to come from a place of, first of all, education. Someone mentioned that, and transparency, and being willing to listen to other people and allow other people or help your community members feel as if though they're seen and being heard. That's very important. It's kind of like shifted for me to where we were basically talking about how we interact with the police. And then for the chief, I might have like an out the box idea for you. Southern California and in Long Beach, the Long Beach Police Department initiated an experiment where the police actually had a substation in a community, and they knew everyone in that community and everyone knew those police officers, and it really did something very powerful and very, very positive in a very rough part of Long Beach for the residents and the police officers to really begin to interact and engage with each other on a different level. So I don't know, maybe the city would like to donate a house for you guys that you can take over and turn it into a little substation, possibly.
That. Yeah, we have actually had substations. I think we're fortunate that we don't have those parts of town where there's really significant high crime. But what we have done is we have broken the city into 15 smaller neighborhood districts, and we've assigned long-term 2 police officers to every district. So I would encourage everyone on the committee, again, to our website. If you do Petaluma Police map, you'll get the map that will allow you to click on where you live or where your business is, and it will show you the 15 districts, and it will show you the staff that we have assigned to your specific area. Their email, their phone, everything to connect with them is there. And that's what that is there for, is so that they get to know the people within a smaller area. This is not part of the calls for service and general patrol model. This is a district policing model to achieve what you're describing Long Beach has done by embedding substations in those neighborhoods. So great point, Claudia. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. All right. And Aaron, we had 2 left, right? 1 or 2?
We do have 2 left, but we also have our city manager with her hand raised. So that
Can't really
Peggy,
tell
you
her
can-
no.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'll get
Peggy, you
20
can go ahead.
texts. This phone will blow up. So, Peggy, do you need to go now, or can you go after the other two speakers?
I'm happy to wait for the two speakers, and then
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So it's Mike followed by Angeles.
Okay. Hi, Mike.
Hey, thank you very much. I will try and be brief, but not talk too fast. I just want to make a comment about the statement about police and needing to carry sidearms. You know, I was fortunate enough to spend 5 years living abroad in a country where the police did not carry sidearms every day. And I can tell you right now, in that country, the actual rate of citizens per capita that owned firearms was on par or equal with the United States. There's actually 13 countries around the world where police do not carry sidearms regularly. So it is entirely possible to have a safe and effective police force that does not carry sidearms every day, that does not have to be a utopia, that does not have to be a dream. We can choose that that's how we want to be policed as a community. And I'll just say this as well. In those countries where the police do not carry sidearms, their rate of being harmed or injured by citizens is on par or lower with the United States, but their rate of actually injuring, harming, or killing other citizens is far below that of the US. So I think to say that this is some utopia that could never happen in the US or in our community, it's just not true. That's something that we can choose to do.
Okay. Thank you. We had another speaker. I think it was Angeles.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak a little bit on the sweep at Steamer Landing because I work for COTS. I wasn't there myself, but I know that the Petaluma Police and us collaborate a lot with those kinds of things. So they were on private property, and unfortunately, they did have to go from that location. But they were given, I believe, at least 72 hours notice, if not more, to vacate the area. And our staffing is consistently in that space and around the community trying to find those who are unhoused or unsheltered and ask them if they want to come into our shelter. So we did have a lot of those people come into our shelter and are still there. So I just wanted to speak on that a little bit. And if you're interested in learning more about what happened, we did have a op-ed on the Argus Courier. It's called Solving Petaluma's Homelessness Crisis Requires Mutual Respect. So I can repeat that again. Solving Petaluma's Homelessness Crisis Requires Mutual Respect. And it's just, we did our best, and thank you for the police for partnering with us. I understand the different how it could look, but just giving you all a background on how things actually came to play. So yeah, thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right, City Manager.
Thank you, Tracy. And Ms. Cruz, thank you so much. Really briefly, and I think it is important about what it looks like versus what we're doing behind the scenes. And I think it's important that we demystify. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Kenyatta, about what that looks like, because we do spend a lot of time both with COTS and Downtown Streets team and our PPD, and we spend weeks, more than 72 hours. We go out and we do a lot of outreach on a daily basis. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, Ms. Cruz, because COTS is an important partner in that effort. And I also wanted to mention, Ken, when you talked about the districts and our police officers that are assigned to those districts, that might be something, as we're talking about community engagement, is spending some more time promoting that. I think we can help with that, and so folks know about, especially with all of our new officers that we brought on board, and getting folks to know who they are. I think that'd be a really great opportunity.
Yes,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we need to coalesce this into, when I say a definition, this is a dynamic definition. It's just a placeholder. And I've sort of taken a stab at it, trying to incorporate what all of you are saying, because all this is directional, right? It's not the answer. It's just sort of the big umbrella for community, for this topic of community engagement. My stab at it is identify needs of the community to give all members a sense of safety, trust, and inclusion. What do people think? Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Anybody hate it? No ego.
Can you say that again, Tracy, so I can write it down so people can look at it?
Would you like me to speak slower, more slowly?
I
even?
just didn't start typing early enough.
Okay. Identify needs of the community to give all members a sense of safety, trust, and inclusion. That could be wordsmith, but do you want to put it up on the slide, or does it resonate with people enough so we can put that as a placeholder and then go on to restorative justice? Yeah. Is there anybody that disagrees? Okay. And the
There's
reason
two people
okay
that disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
At least one.
Okay.
We have Zaira followed by Rabbi Feldman.
Okay, go ahead, Zaira.
I don't disagree. I think what is also needs to be added is as listening to mostly all of the comments, it sounds like it also needs to be viewed with a public health issue lens. Trigger points, right? We need to have honest conversation that a police in uniform, weapon or not, is a trigger point for our communities. And that is something that must be acknowledged and must be repaired in order to build trust. So yes, there's trust, but there's also integrity, accountability, transparency, and honesty that I think needs to be defined as well with involving community engagement.
Okay. And I'm not, ignore my lack of eye contact. I'm looking at my notes, trying to craft this real.
Thank you so much for that. No need. I know that it's repetitive, that you need to always justify your behavior, your actions, right? That's exactly my point.
What is your point? I'm sorry, I missed.
The point is that we have to, as community members that are not officers, we have to watch what we do, how we do it, our body movements. These are all mental trauma, trauma. So again, if we want public safety, it has to be through the lens of and acknowledging public health, because triggers are real in our community. Again, it's how are we engaging with integrity, accountability, holding everyone accountable, aside from our officers and ourselves, transparency, and honesty. Because the conversation that we're having now is honesty, but I'm going to be pretty frank. I think this is a bit of fluff, just a little bit, because we're not talking about triggers within our communities. And if you want to build trust with me, I'm going to tell you now, I get nervous around police because I have our past.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Okay. No, that's now I hear what you're saying. And this is not fluff, Zaira, because you have to set the foundation first, so then you can go deeper, because the next exercise, we're actually going to go into the group, agree on the direction. Otherwise, we can never get to the next step. But thank you.
You know, we're so used to these conversations, and this is the first time of us actually having an honest conversation with a police chief. And so it's important, and but thank you so much, and I'll take that into consideration as well.
Okay, and then so I'm thinking, based upon what you're saying, we might want to add the words transparency and accountability.
Yes, ma'am.
To this. Okay, I'll read it back to you guys in a second, but I think we had one more. Aaron?
We did. We have 3 total now.
We need
but
one.
we
Just
have Rabbi Feldman.
We've got to stop after Rabbi Feldman. We've got to move on after this. So Rabbi Feldman, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I thought tonight's topic was community engagement. I didn't know it was going to be about the relationship with the police department, which is already another subject that we're going to be dealing with at the next week regarding oversight, policies, engagement. So in my mind, community engagement is about the community, and not just the police department's relationship with the community. And for me, when you had the phrase identify the needs, that presents a top-down model. We're all the experts. This committee is the expert. we're going to go around, find out what everybody needs, and we're going to provide it to the community. To me, that's that's a little bit. I don't think it works that way. I'm thinking that community engagement is trying to make recommendations that would create programs and outreach in our community to allow various entities to engage in discussions about community safety, about prejudice, about diversity, about racism, all of those things. So for instance, I mean, some of the ideas that I had were, one would be, from my perspective, to have a clergy conference in our community to try to get the churches and synagogues and mosques engaged in discussions and reaching out into the community. To look to the Boys and Girls Club for activities that the children can learn from each other, much in the educational model that was referred to before. So from my perspective, tonight is not about the police department, and all the things were important. I'm not diminishing the importance of that, but that didn't seem to be the subject for tonight's discussion.
Thank you, Rabbi. So let me respond to that. Let me take a moment. These discussions are not linear, and I want to be really clear about that. We can have a particular topic. Community engagement is a huge bucket, and as I think somebody said in the beginning, and part of that, they're particularly for people of color, because of some of the incidents that have happened to many of us, and just because of what's happening in the world to people of color, vis-a-vis some police officers that are bad. That's a very important part of community engagement. So if that comes up when we talk about community engagement, it needs to be included. And it does. And when we get to that separate, if it even becomes a separate topic, the whole purpose of this committee is to have a conversation that then generates potential solutions. So, and if some aspects of policing fall under community engagement, that's okay, because it's bubbling up because it's important. I think that's why the chief had so much input here, because he recognizes, I've talked to him many times about community policing models. So let's be open on that. And I also wanted to maybe morph the definition a little bit. I'm going to read it to you again because I've expanded it. And when I say, your other point, you had a very good point about identifying the needs of the community. I don't think anybody on this committee is thinking they're the expert or that they know it all. I think they are representative. They were selected because they're representative of certain organizations or constituencies or were appointed. And all of your viewpoints matter. But when we say identify the needs, I don't think you can do any work without a constant sense of inquiry, a constant mind toward inquiry, right? So it simply means that we are constantly asking the community what they need, not prescribing it. That's what I mean by identify. So let me just read it one more time so we can identify needs of the community to give all members a sense of safety, trust, accountability, and inclusion in a transparent manner. I mean, it's not that elegant, but does that work? Okay. Did you get that, Ingrid?
Yes.
Okay.
I have identify needs of the community to give all members a sense of safety, trust, and inclusion in a transparent manner.
And accountability. And accountability.
Accountability.
Yeah.
In a transparent manner.
Right. Okay. All right. So now let's move on, and we're going to do this a little bit more quickly. I know this is a big topic, to restorative justice. We need to talk about the definition of that. And I know, Stefan, I remember you had a question, what does that mean? And frankly, as much work as I do in this space, and as much, you see, if I turn the camera around, you see all these books in this library. I had to go look it up. because there's so many different meanings. So have any of you guys heard of Fania Davis? She's Angela Davis's sister. You know who she is? Okay. She's
Tracy?
Yeah.
We do have Hanan with her hand up. Just giving you FYI.
Okay, Hanan, go ahead.
I just have a really quick clarifying question before we move forward. I am approaching these conversations through the lens of everything that we're speaking about is in relation to police. Police. So like, I want to clarify, should I, is that the lens I should be approaching these conversations with?
If that is your lens.
Okay. I'm feeling a little bit like, wait, everything we're talking about, I'm like, oh, through the lens of like how this applies to Petaluma police. Now I'm feeling a little bit like maybe I need some clarity.
Well, no, for some people, that is what, when you talk about community engagement because of lived experiences, that is what comes up. You know, that's really important to them is the interaction with the police. For others, you know, like the rabbi mentioned, clergy coming together. Maybe that's not the same lens, but that's why we're all here. If it comes up for you, that's perfectly fine. Okay. Okay. All right. So, so Fania Davis is Dr. Davis. She's Angela Davis's sister, and she's famous, world famous for her work in restorative justice. And she started the Restorative Justice of Oakland Youth. And
Tracy, I'm sorry, Tracy, to interrupt you. I need to just clarify one thing for the benefit of Hanan and the group.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the city manager would maybe want to add to this. This work did include a citywide, you know, throughout the community, throughout the city, in addition to policing. I recognize and completely understand and respect the perspective that everyone has coming to this table. I absolutely do. But this isn't just a policing problem. What we're talking about is a community issue. And so to be fair to you, Hanan, the conversations leading up to the formation of this committee were citywide and policing policies. And so I think it's important, if we're really going to make progress as a community, we can't just focus on policing only to get us where we want to be. So I don't know if I feel bad for interrupting you, but I didn't want to leave that, though. It's an important part of why this committee was formed. And I think it's worth making sure there's clarity.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. And so at the same time, I don't want to, as a facilitator, invalidate someone's point of view who, when they hear community engagement because of their lived experiences, you know, the police do come up, because that is a perspective. But I think if we were to go back and look at the transcript of this conversation, it hasn't been just about police. It's been about all, you know, homelessness and schools and churches. So I think we will keep it. People speak what they need to speak, and the group will come up with whatever those recommendations are. Fair enough?
I absolutely agree. I just want to be fair to Hanan's question.
Yeah.
That the focus of this work and how we got here is not just policing.
That absolutely.
I absolutely appreciate everyone's perspective as they come to this important effort. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you. Okay, so as I was saying about restorative justice, so this is her book, if you can see it. It's called the Little Book of Race and Restorative Justice. It's only 100 pages. It's $6 on Amazon, and it's a fascinating book. It gives you definitions and applications. But full disclosure, one of my best friends is her significant other now. So I called him up in North Carolina. I said, put your girl on the phone. I need to speak with her, because I wanted to understand, you know, from her perspective, what it is. And I just want to share it with you, because she is considered one of the world's experts on this. And what Fania told me was it's a set of principles and practices to mediate conflict, strengthen community, and repair harm. So it's not just in the policing sense, right? You know, to the chief's point, this also applies in just conflict resolution. She also mentioned to me is that there's 3 models that one tends to look at just one through which one can view justice. One is a vengeance model, which is retaliation based response. These are her words. The second is conflict avoidance, but then it still festers, and then it's lean in and to really deal with harm and conflict, and that's what restorative justice is all about. Now, she has her doctorate in some form, I can't remember exactly what it is, some form of indigenous healing and whatnot. And she went way off when she into a different realm, talking about this comes from a pre-colonial view of radical respect, radical relationality, and radical responsibility. So in a nutshell, it's about respect, relationality, and taking responsibility. So that's her definition. I just want to give you that, you know, so that we at least have a point to consider. So let's do this in 15 minutes. We're going to have to do a rapid fire round because we really want to get to these recommendations. So
Tracy?
Yes.
Real quick, Ramona did have her hand raised. I wanted to let you finish your thought where you're going.
Okay, Ramona, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm going to wait. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So and Ramona, you may want to say it now. What's your definition of restorative justice? What does it mean to you? So whomever would like, and Aaron, help me on 15 minutes. We're going to stop in 15 minutes, please. Okay.
I'll set a timer, and then Faith is the first one with her hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Faith.
Faith, you're currently muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. And I really wanted to talk about this because I have a whole problem with this being together with community engagement. In my mind, restorative justice is to restore justice. And the justice, and I was thinking about it as part of the justice system, which has not treated us as people of color justly. And so I don't have another definition for it, but I'm really interested in seeing what other people think about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Who else has their hand up?
We have Zyra followed by Eric.
Okay. Hi, Zyra.
Thank you so much. So when I think of restorative justice, I think about, again, reconciliation, like a process between PPD and disadvantaged communities. It's acknowledging past in order for us to move present, in order for us to heal the harm that has been caused for generations so that we can begin reform. So it's truth and reconciliation, and that's my definition. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Others?
Eric?
Thank you. Yeah, I come from a conflict resolution background, so just a couple of words that pop up that overlap. For me, restorative justice at its bedrock includes cooperation and trust and history. It combines those three things to lead to reconciliation. And then in my experience, to advocacy at its final point, like a group agrees to move forward with a change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hanan, followed by Stefan.
Okay.
Did you say Hanan?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yes.
For me, restorative justice is identifying harm and then healing, identifying what needs to be done in order for healing to happen for the person who has done harm and those who have experienced harm, because there's healing that needs to happen on all sides. And then moving forward, imagining what something can look like in a different way moving forward.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And then who was next?
Stefan, followed by Kenyatta.
Okay.
Hi.
Nice.
Well, yeah, last time I didn't really know what restorative justice was, and so I've done a bit of research now, and it's pretty new, and it's, to me, like which is just conflict resolution by having the people who have been affected in like a room or something talk it out, and like, yeah, I forgot who was it. Was it you who was saying it? There are different that they were talking about that there's kind of like a vengeance sort of kind of way to do things, and I think just naturally, like my mom is very much like that, and I like instinctually go like that too. And something like this is, it's voluntary. And just recently, I experienced something. It was kind of in the news recently. It was like a guy went around with a shovel, like bashing people's homes and cars up, and that happened. And I was extremely upset. And something like this, like I don't know if I would be able to do this, like restorative justice with him. I was so upset. But other people, they seemed that, they didn't really care as much. They were like, well, he needs help and all this stuff. And I understand that, but the anger was still there. So just the understanding that there are different people that, to either fight against that sort of vengeance that is in people, like in themselves, or, there's some people that it's easier for that. So I don't know, just like taking into consideration that different people kind of experience this kind of thing differently, and voluntary, I wonder if like with resources and stuff, since it is voluntary, from what I understand, that it would be more open for that. I don't know, for more people to use it, since it is voluntary and not like enforced or something like that. Anyway, kind of a tangent, but that was my experience and thoughts on it.
And that's fair, because restorative justice does not mean that your anger goes away at all. It means that you channel that anger, you try to channel that anger, you tell that person the harm that they've caused, and you try to work together to get to another state. But I mean, it is challenging. It's not an easy thing to do, because it's very easy to strike back. It takes a lot more self-control and thought to actually sit down, and you have to be ready to do it. You really have to be ready to do it. So no judgment if one isn't. Kenyatta?
I would like to note that a lot of what I'm saying is not just my own thoughts. I went back to my group that I'm representing to get people's input on what they wanted me to talk about and bring to the group. So this year, I'm just going to read what a community member, her definition of restorative justice. So from our group, restorative justice brings together the victim and the offender and the community for dialogue, where the victim feels heard and is part of the consequence for the offender. Everyone learns from each other. Transformative for the future as well. Something she would like to see for Sadie and Katie here in Petaluma.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Others? Aaron, are there
we
others?
have Hina. Yes, Hina again.
I wanted to respond a little bit to Stefan, and it brought up another thought, because we use restorative justice a lot in the places that I've worked. One piece about restorative justice is it's not always really the appropriate model if the person who's caused harm is continuing to cause harm. In other words, if there's an abuser, restorative justice might actually do more harm, that process, if that person is not willing to stop the behavior.
Or what if they're unable to stop?
Or if they're unable,
being mentally ill. Yeah.
That can act, because in that case, you're actually asking the person who has received the harm to essentially sit with someone who's going to continue to cause that harm and be more harmful.
And everybody's, the thing about restorative justice, it really has to be a collective effort, because everybody's propensity and personality is different. I can facilitate and be calm and be on both sides. I already told the police chief this when I heard about it. We're going to have a problem. I'm just not going to sit there and, so I'm just saying that that's a silly example, right? Because this person's obviously ill, but there are people who are not ill, who are just evil, I think, and just do things. And so it's natural for human beings to have a reaction against it. It's what you do with that reaction, right? And so what we're talking about here is restorative justice in the community. What's the definition? And it can even go beyond, to me, the justice system. This is about how you have conversations as well when there has been harm. It doesn't have to be harm in the criminal sense. It can be harm, from things that have happened, micro and macro aggressions. There can be restorative justice in that purview. But there's another person or two that has comments on a definition.
Yes, we have Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hello. I think for me, restorative justice in a word is about feedback. And it's about both the person that feels aggrieved, sort of giving feedback to the person that they feel like has taken advantage of them. But I think in its best form, it's bidirectional in that both parties are sort of listening and talking and giving feedback to each other. And I just want to, I think in my opinion, I do think community engagement and restorative justice do go hand in hand, because I think at its best, most aspirational moment, restorative justice is about allowing a community to move forward together. I think anything short of that, it's just punitive, right? It's just judgment. It's just about, one person has been judged as being right, the other is wrong, and we've dealt out punishment for that. But I think restorative justice is the one thing that really has a chance to build that trust and that transparency that we just talked about as part of community engagement.
Okay. And once again, I'm going to say, sorry for not looking at you. I'm taking notes. Okay. All right. And do we have any, we still have a few more minutes, right, Aaron? Is there anyone else who would like?
We're about 5 minutes left, but we have Hananian and then followed by Aaron.
Okay.
I didn't quite finish what I wanted to say. So coming at it from the lens of either like police and community or racial discrimination, whatever history that we have in America, that I think that very much what I was trying to say applies to that as someone who has experienced racism and other discriminatory actions. If someone were to come to me after calling me whatever name, or and try to do some form of reparation or healing, and yet I know that that person still holds those views, that doesn't work.
Why doesn't it work? And I'm not questioning you particularly, but this is a really good point. Why doesn't it work? Because people need to hear.
Why doesn't it work? Because it's really hard to repair something if you know the very next day that same thing is going to be broken.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where Mike's point about the trust comes in, right? It's the trust that there will be a change. And if you don't see that person's going to do anything differently, those words mean nothing. You can't have a real healing. I want to tell you this very short story. This just happened yesterday. I was visiting my significant other. I was downstairs on a call. I come back upstairs. A friend of ours who is, Italian and Mexican, brought his cousin over. And I give you ethnicity just for, and I guess his cousin was from his Italian side. So he had driven out here from Long Island with his new girlfriend. And, I thought they were, in their 30s, nice folks, whatever. And so I left because I had to get back to my home office. And my significant other calls me later, says, "You will not believe what happened." And I said, "What?" And he said, "This gentleman, he's about 30. I don't know why that's important, but he was talking about something and he used the N-word." And the N-word, and he wasn't calling my significant other, who is a Black man, that, but he was just in conversation. I think he thought he was being cool or hip, or I don't know. And I said, "What did you do?" And he said, "Well, I went off." And I said, "You don't ever get to use that word." And I was thinking, and so he said, I said, "How long are they here for?" And he said, "Well, they're only going to be here for a few days." I said, well, among the choice expletive, that's good, because I won't sit down with him. I will not see him again. And there's a point where, you have a choice. You have a choice. My sense is this is a silly kid who's never been schooled on these things. And I don't really have the time to sit there and share it. And I think he'll say something else stupid that'll make me want to throw him over the deck. Chief, you didn't hear me say that. But, so there's a point with restorative meaning, but it's always a choice. And there has to be that trust that there can be a healing. You have to feel it. So here's I want to take a shot at it. So the aggrieved party and the perpetrator work together toward healing to create a sense of trust and transparency going forward. What do you think? For a
Say that again, and I'll type it, and then I can reread it
again?
Okay. And it's not artful. Okay. The aggrieved party and the perpetrator work together toward healing to create a sense of trust and transparency going forward.
Tracy, I would like to add something.
Yes.
Hey.
Go ahead.
The thing that is missing for me, this is my definition that I would like to add it to the mix. So there's like agreed upon framework or a process to put into action a respectful, reciprocal conflict resolution. So yes, it's a dialogue with the affected parties and a neutral third party or a mediator, but there's also a framework that they're working from that's agreed upon before the fact.
Okay. So the aggrieved party and the perpetrator work together, in paren, using an agreed upon process and framework toward healing. This is way too long. We can cut this down later, but to create a sense of trust and transparency going forward. Is that okay? Is that better?
It needs to include to affect change, because just building trust, yeah.
And transparency to effect change. Okay. Okay, Ingrid, you want me to read it again?
I think I have it.
I don't know that I do. So let me read it just to, and you can tell me if I've said this wrong. And we may have to tweak this later another time. The aggrieved party and the perpetrator work together, paren, using an agreed upon process and framework, close paren, toward healing to create a sense. Wait a minute. The aggrieved party and the perpetrator work together, yes, using an agreed upon process and framework to create a sense of trust and transparency to effect change.
Did you take out toward healing?
Yeah, no, I left healing in there.
Okay.
But yeah, I did. Toward healing because it's about healing to affect change. Is that okay? All right. All right.
And
so
Tracy, we do have Lou with his hand raised, and after that, that's after 15 minutes.
Okay. Okay, Lou, go ahead.
Could you read Fania Davis's definition again?
Well, this wasn't her full definition. I got pages of notes here, but
You gave a short definition at the beginning.
yes, just let me find it. Hold on. I've got all these notes. Her first definition is restorative justice is a set of principles and practices to mediate conflict, strengthen community, and repair harm. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I liked it. I really liked it a lot when you read it, and I do have a bit of training in this area. I thought it was pretty complete, and I was just comparing it in my own mind to what things came out in the group discussion. So, and could you read what came out of the group discussion again?
Sure. The aggrieved party and the perpetrator work together using an agreed upon process and framework toward healing to create a sense of trust and transparency to affect change. I mean, that's a James Joyce sentence. It goes on. It's a run-on sentence, but
can we add in the community?
Where would you add that? Oh, change in the community to affect change in the community. Yeah, I think that's relevant. Well, wait a minute. Kenyatta got a question. What if it's just between two people? Is it always, that doesn't necessarily extend to the community, right? I don't know.
Not always. But if we're talking about it in a community framework,
yep.
That would be my only thought is if we're talking about community engagement, then it seems like I'm just looking back from my people, from my group.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Lou, do you want to?
Well, one of the principles of restorative justice is that conflicts happen in the community. They're not isolated. So they don't just affect the people who are having difficulty. They affected people who are connected to them. And also the reasons people get into conflict has to do with things that are connected to the community. so that it's kind of a restorative practices that recognizing that conflicts are connected to the community, to the wider community.
Well, I think it's a fair extrapolate. I don't even know if it's an extrapolation. I think it's a fair definition to add in the community on there, you know, particularly given what the focus of this group is. All right. So did you get that, Ingrid? To affect change in the community. That's
Yep.
just okay.
Going forward. Yep.
Yeah. Or you don't have to put going forward. You can just say in the community.
Okay.
All right.
And then
I'm
Tracy,
sorry.
we have Rabbi Feldman with his hand raised, and then looks like
Claudia.
as well.
Yeah. Okay. After those two, we're going to move to the next segment. Go ahead.
Just a short thing, which is, can we add in there the repair harm piece of the definition that you read? Because that part wasn't clear to me in the group definition that we just came out with. It does have something about about healing there,
yeah.
but the repair harm, I think, is I don't know, for me was a significant phrase. That's all. That's my suggestion.
No, that's a good suggestion. So because healing isn't it, this is the former English major in me, isn't healing almost synonymous with repairing harm? Knox Nix, right? Yes and no. Do we want to call
like healing is more holistic. Repairing harm to me it's important, but it is a little mechanical. And when we're talking in the community, especially if we're looking through the lens of like how this applies to the police, I think it's more holistic.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
No, Rabbi, I don't know. Do you come on? Do you have more to say? That's okay. Get in there. Okay. Yeah. All right. We had Claudia, who's been waving. Okay, it's your turn. Okay.
I just wanted to, can we change perpetrator to offender?
Yep.
There's just something so legalistic, policey about the word perpetrator.
Yep. Or even offending. Yeah. The aggrieved party offender still has a legal, a criminal justice system ring to it, doesn't it? How about the aggrieved party and the offending party, or
that would be fine too, but I just, perpetrator that's a trigger for me.
Okay, got it. You got that, Ingrid?
Yep, agreed. I'm going to say the aggrieved and offending parties work together.
Yeah, there you go. Work that. Okay.
Using an agreed upon process and framework toward healing to create a sense of trust and transparency and to affect change in the community.
Right. In transparency, yes, to affect change the whole purpose is to affect change in the community. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not the additive, but to. Okay. And did we have anybody else?
Yes, we had Lou and Aaron, but it looks like they put their hands down. Not sure they still have comments.
Yeah, Lou?
Well, in the interest of time, so another principle of restorative justice is that it's not about assigning blame and having labels like offender and victim or something like that tends to do that. But I just want to say that we don't have to change it or fix it. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and that is true. I just want to put a point on this though. What we're dealing with here, we're here because there has been harm done. Sure. Okay, people have experienced harm. And so, as one of my clients likes to say, we got to call a thing a thing. So I think it's important that we do look at repairing harm and healing.
Yep.
So I think we need to use those terms right now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is about those things, absolutely, repairing harm and healing relationships, yes.
Yeah, okay. And did we have one more? Nope. Okay. All right, so we have our two working definitions. Thank you. I know that was tedious, but we needed all of your input to massage these definitions. And now what we're going to do, and we're going to do this rapid fire because, well, as rapid as you can so that Ingrid and others can capture these. You know, if the assignment, the homework assignment, and we sort of lump these together, community engagement and restorative justice. What are your 3 innovative ideas for change? And we're actually going to go through and call on each person. If you don't have any, that's okay. You can simply say pass or whatever. But we would like to give everybody a chance to give in, you know, just very quickly their 3 points. There are 3 ideas in terms of the ideas for change, you know, in community engagement / restorative justice. What your first of all, start with what your definition of success is. What does that look like? What does success look like in this arena? So let's put it this way: 6 months or a year down the road, if people were to stop you in a coffee shop or in a bar, assuming, because I think we'll all be back by then, and ask you, well, did you succeed when you, as a committee, when you worked on the notion of community engagement and restorative justice? And for you to say yes, what does that look like? Okay. What's your definition of success in this bucket? And then what are your 3 innovative ideas for change? We're going to ask you to go quickly because we are going to end at 9. And whenever we finish this, we're going to have whatever time left for public comment. So if I can get the city's help in calling, I guess, in alphabetical order, that's the easiest way to do this. And please give your definition of success for this endeavor down the road. And what are your 3 ideas for change? If you have less than 3, it's fine, but let's just keep it quick. And remember, Martine is trying to translate. So, Susie?
Yes, here. I was setting myself up.
Okay. Ingrid,
yes,
are you ready?
I'm ready. We'll go alphabetically again, and I will try to take things down as we go along, and Ingrid will also be scribing.
And we'll have the video. We can always go back and triple check, but we're hopefully going to be able to consolidate this tonight. So
of course, good. And we will start with Joel. Joel Brunner-DeKeen.
Thank you. My definition of success, again, from an educator standpoint, is a measurable amount of change that can be seen, hopefully in a positive way. In speaking with my constituents, 3 innovative ideas for change, and again, at an education level of an elementary school, diverse discussion around holidays and celebrations, the need for more diversity within the school districts themselves, across the community, and then it's going into gender identity and how people identify with themselves, with those around them, and ways that can be incrementally changed within an educational setting.
Okay. And yeah, thank you. Okay.
Great. We'll go with Liz Chacon.
So I see success as an increased level of trust and open communication. The 3 things that I don't know how innovative, but ideas for change are: 1, making sure that we're inviting the various voices to the conversations, and I see conversations plural, what we're doing in the schools, what we're doing in the community, that we're actually listening to the community voices and making changes in influencing policy.
Great. Angeles Cruz.
So for COTS, our definition for success would be committing to creating a change, but also having a plan with actions and objectives on how each thing is going to be successful. For ideas for change, the first one, since we are COTS, is zoning reform. So limiting the amount of single family homes in Petaluma and increasing more multifamily places such as apartments to reduce segregation and racial disparities, and as well as hopefully spreading resources across the entire Petaluma area, not just certain neighborhoods or zip codes. So zoning reform is the first one. The second one is education and communication. So fostering dialogue within neighbor to neighbor and giving and providing resources to get those groups started. And I think it's important to also used within those groups. Big terminology may not be super accepted or understood by people in the community. So just calling things what they are instead of big names that maybe not everyone understands or isn't educated on. And to other people's points is proper education in history and in learning about others that are different from one another. And the third one would be budgeting for the things that we want to change, making sure that those are prioritized. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see, Claudia de la Pena.
Hi, yes, thank you. So success, in my mind, would be measurable outcomes and more Petaluma residents feeling as though they are actually seen and heard and respected. I kind of went for the sky's the limit approach. So one idea would be to open a cultural center here in Petaluma. Maybe we could model the La Peña Cultural Center that is in Berkeley, where through the arts, panel discussions, and community gatherings, people in our city are educated about diversity and how important it is to the city. And I would like something like that to be led by members from the BIPOC and the LGBTQ+ community. The second thing would be to rethink public safety, come up with some sort of program that would co-sponsor the BREATHE Act. And then the last thing I came up with would be to possibly create an ad hoc committee that would host town hall meetings or pop-up engagement events. And that committee could possibly be responsible for locating funding for ongoing programs.
Okay, thank you. Next, Ramona Faith.
Thank you. We discussed this at our CHIPA meeting, which is a community health initiatives for the Petaluma area cross-sector collaborative. Really, our definition of success would be that everyone in our community would feel that they had a voice. And they had the ability to share their voice without any type of retaliation, and would always be treated with respect. There was a lot of conversation about people not feeling safe to raise their voice. And so our definition is that everyone has a voice and feels they have a voice. As far as the innovative ideas for change, the question we asked ourselves is before we can really engage in community engagement, we need to understand what the barriers are to community engagement. And that conversation really led to, some information that we all learned from each other. We came up with what we called community agreements. And I just want to share with you what those were. Really trying to create a container or a space where people can have a voice. One is be curious, open, and respectful. Call in, not out. Throw sunshine, not shade. Take space and make space. If you are usually quiet, challenge yourself to make more space for others. And if you usually talk a lot, be mindful and leave room for the quieter voices. Lean into the discomfort. We're only growing when we are at the edge of our learning, and sometimes it's hard. We talked a lot about how to move through the discomfort. Uphold confidentiality. We don't want people to share someone else's personal stories, information, or attributes, things to people without their permission, but we want people to share the knowledge beyond the room. And to do our best. We make mistakes, we try our best. It's okay to try and learn and do over and be better. And asking for help is part of our movement for a better community and a better world. So we've really been focusing on how to address the barriers to community engagement, because you can't go out and engage if you don't understand what the barriers are. That was our thoughts. Thank you.
Rabbi Ted Feldman, your success and ideas.
Sure. The success, I think, would be, you had mentioned earlier about people coming up in a coffee shop and asking you the question. And actually, I was thinking people coming up in the coffee shop from different ethnic groups in town and talking to each other and looking in our community and see communication at all different kinds of levels among different groups in our community and different people. Some of the ideas that I had discussed with my group, one I mentioned earlier, to use basically the total picture is to use community structures that are already in place to stimulate conversations and exchanges of ideas so that people feel safe speaking with each other. So, as I mentioned, trying to work through churches, through nonprofit organizations in the community to be able to create opportunities for people to learn about each other and to learn issues about respect, all the things we've been talking about, community engagement.
Great, thank you. Anthony Franklin.
Oh, sorry about that. Just want to take myself off mute. So something that is workable, measurable, and inclusive of all the definitions that we talked about today, and captures the essence of everything that was shared. And not just about the police, but the community at large, so that people feel comfortable in schools. Our students feel comfortable at school. Our students that are of color feel comfortable at school. Our students that have a different sexual preference feel comfortable at schools. Our students that are just different from the larger group of students that are there. Whether you feel comfortable going into a restaurant, whether you feel comfortable just walking around town, just something that we are truly engaged as a community, not just targeting one part of the community. A specific idea that someone from the group shared would be doing a series of confidential restorative circles that actually address specific incidents so that we all witness the outcomes of those restorative processes. Then maybe there could be a larger community restorative dialogue that could be more symbolic, but may not be quite as tangible.
Okay, thank you. Johanna Garcia.
So my definition of success would be making Petaluma more inclusive for all community members, and for the ideas, having a multicultural festival, kind of like the Butter and Eggs Parade, but having like different booths so we can learn about everybody's culture and food and music. Second one would be having police officers patrolling in bicycles so that they can engage in conversations with community members. For example, students walking home from school, or community members walking their dogs. And then the third one would be free activities led by community members, like someone teaching a yoga class or a dancing class, or even having like events like drive-in movies that are free that everybody can attend. That's it.
Okay. Zaira Garcia.
Yeah, my definition of success is reallocating funds from police and refunding that to our community. We need to base it by looking at human cost, financial cost, and social cost. We need to rearrange those priorities and explore more community resources that can keep us safe, and putting money back into communities to undo the harm that has been caused for generations so we can begin to heal and create reform. The recommendations are, the first one, mandatory diversity quotas in public government decision-making bodies because data matters. Second recommendation is acknowledgements. We need to do history presentation to talk about Sonoma County and structural racism and dismantling structural racism, the origins of police, and starting our meetings by land acknowledgement. The third recommendation is inactivity that has to do with art. There was an article that came out, and I think imagining justice, we need artists as first responders, art to shift narratives and begin to imagine the possibility of justice. Just to kind of quote Ava DuVernay, art requires imagination and justice does as well. They're both about seeing something that's not there and then working to make it so. Thank you.
Thank you. Hanan Hunaidi.
What the definition of success is a community in which people of color, people from the queer and trans community, Muslim neighbors feel safe and feel integrated and acknowledged, that their families and whatever form their families look like feel normalized in the community. I'm sorry, I'm tired and I'm running out of words. And the suggestions that the Petaluma Pride came up with is reallocation of funds, which is investing in nonviolent solutions that have proven effective instead of continuing to buy or receive more and more military-esque equipment and weapons. Recommending books and films with community discussion groups. I want to second Syra's suggestion of acknowledging whose land we live on before starting any city meetings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Eric Leland.
Thank you. Success, large reduction of harm in the community. For innovative ideas, Petaluma needs to implement a civilian-led dispatch system. Studies show across the U.S. that upwards to 40% of calls to police dispatchers are described to the responding officers as more severe than they actually are, which gives a force-forward force more inclination to respond with more force than necessary. This has led to negative outcomes. So we need to implement civilian-led dispatch, and we have a great opportunity to do that with the CAHOOTS model that we're implementing. Second one is to implement youth and adult restorative diversion programs. This could be things like youth courts, restorative community conferencing, restorative circles in our schools. Essentially, let's just minimize the role of traditional adversarial justice so we have much better outcomes for everyone. Finally, implement in Petaluma robust bias incident tracking, gathering, tracking, and reporting. Let's make sure our reporting is easy and safe for anyone that is the recipient targeted with crimes, along with regular and robust reporting and analysis of this incident detail publicly. In other words, like quarterly on a regular basis so the public understands what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonja Lowry. Is Sonia still with us?
Yes, she is. Sonia, can you unmute yourself?
Can't hear you.
No, I know we can't.
We can't hear you, Sandra. Sorry.
Maybe we can come back. Let's circle back with her to keep moving. Is that okay? And then we'll come back.
Sandra, we'll come back to you because we couldn't hear it at all. Go ahead.
We'll move to Sadie Martinez.
Trying to come off mute. Can you guys hear me? I'm not sure if you can, or if you can hear me or see me.
We can. Is this
Sorry.
Sandra?
Sorry.
Is that Sandra?
You want to let her speak? I can wait.
Yeah. Let's let Sadie go, and then we'll come back to Sandra. Okay.
Okay.
I was going to say that the people of Petaluma feeling safe and supported. Some of those ways would be for, us to pass the new law so that nobody is the victim of a hate crime. Other ways are to make sure that the kids become a priority. And so racism and systematic change should be implemented in the schools, maybe even coaches. They play such a big part in our children's lives. I think that it's important that they too get involved. There's been such a divide that nobody's going to come together if you don't reach the kids. I think they should be a priority. And with that, you need the presence of the police, because once again, yes, you have the community, but everybody can't unite without them, because it just seems like the divide in our town, they tend to support the police department. So if everybody has the support of the police department and everybody is witnessing this, I believe it'll make a big change and impact. That's all.
Right. And can we go back to Sonia? Is she, let's see. Sonia, how's your audio? Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness, guys. I'm so sorry. My husband had a procedure today, and so I'm in between. Let me just share my input. And I would say that success in the community, we would be able to see success in the community when we see in our metrics and our outcomes equitable access to resources and opportunity for the people in the community, like meeting the needs of the people in the community. And some of the changes, I believe, are bias training. And then the other gentleman expanded that a little further, so I won't repeat that. And then we see, in order to move towards like decreasing racial disparities in some of the metrics like health, or some of the outcomes we see in schools, that would literally be about how we're utilizing the voice of the community to bring solutions using the voice of the community. And that's what I would share.
Thank you.
More faster, please.
Julia Main.
Hi there, thank you. One of the things that came up, well, first of all, defining success would have more representation of people of color, and also people with different lifestyles be represented on town councils. I actually typed up a bunch of stuff and sent it in, and that was one suggestion I had, that if we have homework like this, which is great, but maybe we send it in ahead of time, just a thought. One of the things that came up from our committee was that an 800 number be created for the community outreach. For example, if something wants to share something of a positive thing that's happening, as well as information, and also creating a television station that is, Petaluma focused. The other thing is intentionally inviting police officers to school functions. We talked about that earlier, but things that they talked about specifically was inviting them when they have guest speakers, when there's like book fairs, and inviting the police officers to attend basketball, football, and different sporting events, not just because their kids are there, but just to have a presence. Most of the time, they said, make sure I say this, is that if the police officer is at school, that means something terrible has happened. And we want to just change that narrative so that it could just be that they come once a month, or there's different schools. And, it sounds also like there's just a lot of problems with retention. And right now, even there's government grants where you could get more funding for more police officers. And another option that they said, if the police officers don't live in the neighborhood, that they could have a stipend where they could actually stay over for the weekend, and then investing in Petaluma and really using it as a leisure area as well. And if they have families, they could come with them, versus if they don't live in the community and they're spending time traveling, like maybe they live in San Rafael or in Oakland or in San Francisco, that travel time takes away from not only the productivity of working, but also for them to even be able to do fun volunteer things. And then, so I have a whole bunch of things that we talked about as a community, and also parent outreach. But one of the things they talked about is really making sure that that the stigma around seeing a police officer, especially for our brown and black kids, that it went from fear to actually a conversation. And also that was one of the things too, that there's more of a beat, like police officers would be able to have a certain beat and mix it up, but really be able to walk in the communities to know the seniors as well as, youth activists. But I think that there's so much division, and it seems like this is going to be a lot of work going forward. But the parents that I talked to were very excited that I was here representing the school, and that it can't be an us and them, and that somehow that it needs to come together and have some kind of cohesive like bonding or building. I took a class at Dominican University, and I used to go to Petaluma, but I was the only person of color in that class, and I didn't see a lot of the other community members. It was mostly retired people taking this class, and it just would be nice, like when you talked about having the arts and cultural center where you can have different artists. There's an amazing artist right now named Orrin Carpenter, who's African American. He's a professional artist. His things are at the DeYoung Museum, and he is a resident artist at the Mocha Museum in Nevada. So like really having him to be able to come to Petaluma and be able to have an art exhibition and have him speak, and just cross-cultural.
He lives in Petaluma.
Oh, okay. I don't know where he lives, but I know I've seen his art, and I've gone to some of his art talks via Zoom, and he's just a wonderful resource. So I think, and the other thing was that businesses need this same training as well. Some parents said that when they walked into different shops to go shopping, or different restaurants, especially parents of color, they did not feel welcomed. And so even this work that you're doing here needs to actually be in the business community. And the last thing is that there should be funding for a job to kind of PR or rebrand Petaluma, like Petaluma One Heart or All Welcome, where it's a real push, with brochures, with everything that you would do for any kind of new business, but really have it centered that, Petaluma is a welcoming place. but I think, so that's all the stuff that came back from my committee. So thank you.
Thank you. Mike Miller.
Hello. For me, the definition of success is when all members of the Petaluma community can feel safe and welcome in a space that is free of all forms of intimidation and where diversity and inclusion is accepted and embraced. For my group, we really only had two, innovative ideas for change. One of them is that the state of California Board of Education recently passed a voluntary ethnic studies curriculum. I think that, sort of echoing something that Eric Leland said earlier, I think that schools are a really great place to engage with the community. And I think an innovative approach would be in Petaluma to take that from being voluntary to an automatic opt-in for students, where parents and students have to opt out of that curriculum, to really encourage dialogue and conversation around ethnic studies and diversity in our schools. I think if we are having that conversation with our kids are going to take that conversation back to their parents. I think it's a way that we as a community can really engage through our schools about creating a safer and more diverse and more inclusive community. And the second topic that I'll bring up would be, again, it's regarding police interaction, but I do believe that police are our most visible and sustained interaction within our community. And I do think that an innovative idea for change would be to discuss establishing protocol and regulations for carrying of a deadly weapon, as in their sidearm, to situations that don't immediately require that level of implied force and overt intimidation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joanna Pond.
Hi, so I think this would be just more voices, more community involvement from those that we don't typically hear from. Like right now we have a great cross section, but I don't think we typically see this type of diversity in Petaluma. And so I think 3 ideas for change. I like what Sadie brought up last time, Sadie's stance combined with like the Clean Act. I think if people knew that our officers in this town had been screened for past misconduct as well as possible ties to white supremacy, then they would feel more comfortable interacting with them when they are approached by them, as well as ongoing bias training. I know that's been brought up, but not just like a one-off, where like, 1 or 2 uncomfortable conversations, but ongoing. Also, something that really helps myself, I'm gonna speak for Kenyatta as well. We had a couple of interactions this summer that turned kind of ugly with both on duty and off duty police officers. And we had the opportunity to sit down with Chief Savano and Deputy Chief Miller and City Manager Peggy Flynn to basically have what we talked about today, like some type of restorative justice. I would love to see that for other people as well, to have that type of access to sit down and have those types of uncomfortable conversations.
Thank you. Stefan Perez.
Hello. My definition of success would be finding specific sources of grievances using quantifiable data like the survey that we have, and then investigate the grievances and determine the best pathway to address them, whether it be through policy change, increased funding, or promoting of Petaluma's positivity that is already there. So basically better PR. Kind of goes to the whole tourist thing, change that. Then have measurable data to gauge a success afterwards, and then reassess from there. 3 suggestions are promote multicultural activities and awareness. Like from earlier, it was also in the survey, somebody had said that. And 2, show a unity for Petalumans through its own rich history, like the Butter and Eggs Parade, but also have that with there's more. There's actually plenty of diversity, like in the history of Petaluma, that people can look through. And 3, city recognition of outstanding citizens. So this recognition of people who are doing good work here would help, I think. And that's all I got.
Okay, Kenyana Reynolds.
Definition would be a community no longer divided by fear, hate, or stereotypes, but a sense of safety and inclusion to be oneself in this community. The thing I want to go back to, let me see if I can remember his name, the teacher that speaks first, because he's first in the alphabet. Is it Josh? Did I make that? Joel. I'm going all the way back to, I teach PE at elementary school. So I feel like sports is a common thing throughout all people, right? So no matter what color, race, ethnicity, your background, sports is something that all kids can play and deserve to play. And I think that helps build community. And in one of the last Parks and Recs meetings, they brought up baseball fields, and baseball typically here, at least in Petaluma, is pretty not diverse. A lot of my students invite me to their games, and there really is not much diversity, and it's the same kids and the same Petaluma families that are playing. And so it'd be nice to see more diversity, starting with our youth in sports, right? And so things here are super expensive, and so a lot of kids can't play because they can't pay for it or they can't participate. And so it seems to be the same people. So it'd be nice to go back to when we used to be able to play sports, for free. And so I don't know how we could use that, maybe reallocating some of those funds, the police, for weapons and things like that, to more community things like for kids, because I feel like that's kind of where it starts, right? You learn things as a child, and so that's kind of where the development starts. And so if they're seeing people that look different from them and they're playing on the same sports teams, that might bring some community into the community, city councils and committees, because if you go to those meetings, there's not much diversity on those panels. And so again, I think that's what is a problem in programming for diversity and children's activities here in Petaluma. And I would say I want to agree with Claudia. I think it'd be cool to have an ad hoc committee for community engagement. I think that's a great idea. And Zaira had a good idea as far as starting each meeting with land acknowledgement. I thought that was good. And there was another one. Julia's, again, I think she also brought up the more diversity in city council. So I second that as well. And that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Fabian Roma Macias.
Hi there. What I said, my definition of success was a mutualistic relationship between the city and the people / community. So kind of just having that continuous relationship between the community and its citizens, and having that in between, just kind of that communication. Some ideas for changes that I wrote down was an increase in representation for Petaluma's community and groups, whether it's race groups or it's sexuality or anything like that. Make sure that everyone has the adequate representation. And building off of that, my second idea was increasing the conversation / interaction between these groups to make sure it's not just one group being isolated, but every group kind of just mixing in with each other, and forming kind of like that mutualistic relationship in the sense that it's not just that group, it's that group interacting with other groups, making it like more of a sense of community. And then my third idea was more representation and consideration of youth voices and opinions, because something that I've heard a lot during this conversation was kind of the importance of having youth voices within the city, and kind of how starting them off young in regards to, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I heard a glitch. I didn't know if it was mine. Kind of making sure that, I know something that was said before was making sure that we're reaching both the youth and the parents, but not all youth have the same ideas as the parents. So if we can get that youth and kind of reflect their opinions and ideas, we can kind of work with that and make sure that everyone is seeing each other as equals and not just my parents think you're different, so I should think you're different, and kind of stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Faith Ross.
So my definition of success is that you have an increased level of trust within the community. Complaints from community members decreased because they feel secure within their community. And the ideas for change, Julia said a lot of what I had put down originally, but one of the things is to actually make a list of the things within our community that divide us racially, and put that list in order of importance, and then work on that, on solving those issues as a community. And then the other thing was having a community member, people of color, involved in the training of our police officers, working with our schools and other activities within and other areas of our community. And the last thing was work on ways that we can make our city government, police department, and all other parts of our city reflect the makeup of our community. This will mean making changes in our hiring policies.
Okay. Mark Scott.
Hi, my definition of success is a measurable change with positive feedback from all members of the community. My concept or theme was to think of common goals, common space, and obviously starting with youth to help kick this off. I would love to see more foot patrols by the police department. One of the things I've seen is the videos of, you see an officer playing basketball or something with a kid and it goes viral, and you have to wonder, why does that happen? So there's a lot of kids that play over at Leghorn Park that their only interaction is after they're already pulled over. And so you would love to see them just be able to interact in a way that is positive. There's no negative experience. It's just a total interaction of positivity. So I'd love to see more of the police actually out. I would love to see a more common goal of food events that are more, I don't want to say chili cook-off or an event or food truck event, but I'd love to see more of a community event that's put on by the community, invited by the community, but it actually has everybody as a part of it, or different ethnic groups. And then for my last one, I would love to see an idea or a concept of like access to a cop or adopt a cop, where members of a group or a business can request time with an officer. Most of the times and most of the programs are a peek into the window of what the police is already doing or what they can do for you. But what it would be nice to see is an actual reverse in that, and actually have them come see what actually is happening in that community and how that community is affected by whichever change is happening. So those are my 3 goals.
Okay. Pedro Toledo.
Thank you. For me, and I'm with the Petaluma Health Center. So for me, reduce social and health disparities in the community, and that of course starts with the government and public institutions that understand and are responsive to the needs of historically excluded populations. I mean, one of the learnings from this past year, the COVID pandemic, is that the many of our government systems and processes and public health systems and even healthcare systems weren't really geared towards the needs of those individuals who, I mean, we're calling them essential workers, but those individuals who are historically underserved and excluded, oftentimes because they're poor. Poverty is always going to be connected to disparities, especially when it comes to health disparities. Individuals who are working 2-3 jobs here in Petaluma at the food processing plants and in our agricultural sector, who have very little voice incredibly busy, you know, and you know, and they deserve a voice at the table as well. So ensuring that historically excluded communities are engaged, involved, and heard is critical. And of course, that only happens if we understand and we are committed to the fact that representation matters, and ensuring that our staff in our public institution, our government, city government, county government, local law enforcement, fire, hospital, clinic, that all of our staff reflect the diversity of the community, and that we're providing opportunities for people to rise out of poverty, to have opportunities to be involved and engaged, and certainly represented in our elected bodies and our appointed bodies and other sectors of public life. So those would be my 3 areas. Thank you.
Okay, Catherine Wells.
Thank you. So I am here representing the Petaluma Area Chamber of Commerce because engaging with our business community is important in this process. And so my definition of success, or our definition of success, would be, and I'm stealing Faith's words here, increased level of trust between the businesses and the community, and hoping that the Chamber of Commerce can be seen as a partner toward improving race relations in the community. And one of the suggestions for doing that would be the Chamber of Commerce taking on creating and providing training resources for organizations such as educational webinars, panel discussions, etc., that are open to the public or to other businesses. Let's see here. Those trainings could be disseminated through the large email lists that we have so that we can get as many businesses involved as possible. And then separately on restorative justice front, I'd love to see us enhance the programs that already exist through Mentor Me and Petaluma People Services Center. They have several restorative justice resources already available. So instead of reinventing the wheel, there's some opportunities to enhance those programs that already exist. Thank you.
Erin Wilkins.
Thank you. I'm here as a representative of the Japanese American Citizens League, Sonoma County chapter. And our group was specifically keen on the restorative justice practices point. And so success to us would look like increased implementation in areas where they do not already have restorative justice practices in place, such as schools, potentially law enforcement or city departments, so that the community can engage in more ways and feel that they have safe options for public safety. Action items, the first would be to involve more diverse community, including BIPOC, to determine which organizations, schools, or agencies don't have sufficient systems in place, and then expand restorative training for those who need it. The second would be ongoing education in the community via community programs. Many people have spoken about this already, but community events that specifically draw in diverse groups like teens, Latinx, Asians, etc. But by engaging community leaders of these groups to help determine what will be the most culturally appropriate and well received. And then finally, some kind of system to check on the effectiveness of these programs after implementation. And I would just like to second Zara's motion for land acknowledgement, and also Pedro's motion to increase diversity in hiring and representation in governing bodies. Thank you.
Okay, Luz Wire.
Thanks.
So I'm here representing the Petaluma Community Resources Relations Council, PCRC. And we feel that also building trust is the most important thing to do. Trust between community members and between the community and the city and the police. And that there are many different ways to do that. And many of the ideas that have been expressed here tonight would be great for that. But that it's by building trust and building relationships, actually, that trust is built. And so finding ways, different ways to grow relationships between all those different groups, between community members and between the city and the police. So a couple of ideas that we had were about creating spaces for community dialogues on all different topics that are important to the community. So it could be on race, could be on policing, could be on anything, but having places where those dialogues happen and where people are really listening to each other, and there's some kind of structure so that people are really hearing each other. That's a way that people get to know each other and begin to understand people who they don't understand. They discover something new about one another. Second idea is we also really were big on the idea of restorative justice, which has been talked about tonight. And so the idea of actually having a restorative practices center in Petaluma that would provide training for community members and organizations in restorative practices, that would provide restorative services for community members and organizations, and that would also be a space that would support healing racial trauma. You know, that's an important aspect of improving race relations and having things get better. And then the third point is about implementing programs. That any programs that get implemented should look at what's happening already in that area and what's working about it and what's not working about it. Just recognizing that there's a context when someone gets an idea to do something, that idea is going into a context, and that we should look at what's happening already, and then having ways of measuring whether things are working or not. That's it.
Okay. And Tracy, that concludes the panel's ideas.
Thank you very much. Aaron just texted me. I have to make sure there's no emergencies. What are you saying, Aaron? Oh, okay. So what I have a proposal. It is almost 10 minutes to 9. I am very respectful of time. You all are hardier than I am. I don't think I can go another hour. But here's I want to be. Here's a thought. I know we need to do some public comment. And this was really useful, helpful, you all, because you gave lots of feedback. These suggestions were well thought out. And I want to give them the time they deserve. So here's my proposal. The city has taken these down, verbatim, and then we also have the tape. They will transcribe them for me. And one of the things I do professionally is code and analyze data, particularly qualitative data, which this is. So what I'd like to do is get this data and then create an affinity diagram, where I'm looking at things that work together, because there are some redundancies and things that complement each other, and then bring that back to the next meeting, or actually send it out before a week before the next meeting. And then we can discuss it a bit more, and then we can vote on which and figure out which of the top 3 ideas that bubble to the top, and then work out SMART goals that we recommend to the council. Is that a process that works for you all? It'll be very transparent. You'll see what I've done. I'll walk you through it. I do this all the time. I love doing this. I don't know, I'm a data wonk. I love going through comments. It's interesting to me because they tell a story. So I'll do that. Now, in terms of public comment, I need the city attorney's advice here. How much time, and then I want the group's input, but how much time should we allow? Because we want to hear from the public, but it is late.
Thank you, Tracy. The critical thing is that people's comment time be equal. and it can be finite, meaning a limit on the whole chunk of time. That you've seen the council do it. We did that on Monday, and we do it regularly. So a reasonable amount of time for the folks that are present. I'm seeing 19 attendees currently. One hand raised. So I'm you see, I'm shirking giving you a specific recommendation, which I can do, or maybe Aaron can help with. The critical factors, though, are equal amounts of time and a reasonable amount of time given 19 attendees. We've used a system in the past that Aaron's familiar with to see how many of those attendees want to come, and then that can help in dividing up the time in a reasonable way.
Okay, why don't we do that? Thank you. That was very helpful. So Aaron, how many, are there 19 attendees from the public? Is that what you were saying, Eric?
Yes, there are 19 current attendees.
Is it possible to ask them how many would like to make comments?
Yes, once we start public comment, I can ask for those wishing to make a public comment to raise their hand.
Well, what I'm trying to gauge is the amount of time that we should allow for this, because it's late and I'm looking at people's faces trying to, I'm standing up now because I can't keep sitting down. So, you know, I know you all need to go, and I really respect your time and your input, but if we do 20 minutes, is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
As long as the time is divided equally among the speakers, yes.
Okay. So that means if we have 19 people, they no more than a minute is a minute apiece if we have 19 speakers. Which I don't think we're going to.
Tracy, I think what Aaron was suggesting is he can ask folks to raise their hands if they'd like to speak. I see 2 hands raised right now, and then we can just do the math.
Okay, let's do that. Let's go that way.
And Tracy, Lou does have his hand raised.
Yes, Lou.
So I just wanted to say, so I had written out what I said. Would it be a support to you or the city staff if I sent that to you?
Sure. That'd be very
I
helpful.
imagine others, did that also.
That'd be a great check and balance. Be perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Lou.
Okay.
And if you didn't write it out, don't feel bad. It is on tape. We will capture it accurately. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Zavala, can you take it over, please?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Those wishing to participate in public comment must raise their virtual hand and wait to be called on by the moderator. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. Countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. Your microphone. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you're invited to do so. At this time, there are 4 speakers, so we can do 3 minutes apiece. The first speaker that I have is John Hania. I will now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening. I have listened to the whole meeting. The first thing I'd like to say, I disagree with Ken Savano with his comment when he said the police officer, they show up in uniform when they are on duty. Ken, I'd like to remind you the time you requested to meet with me when you became a lieutenant, I've asked you to show up with that uniform. I didn't care about your gun, and you absolutely refused to show up when we met at Starbucks. Second, the police department does not follow policy and procedure at all. And some of you are very well aware of that, and they have documents of that. In fact, I believe some of you tried to make the complaint by the policy, and they weren't successful. In reference to the town hall meeting, there were just 2 town hall meetings on the 8th of the month, one at Putnam Plaza and one at the Walnut, which is, I was downtown with my 4-legged partner in crime, and there was at least a dozen police officer, which is, I had a very pleasant conversation with them, with the exception of one that he wasn't happy at all after I point out to the sergeant what he was doing wrong. And I know the sergeant very, very, very well, which is I had endless of dealing with him over the years about wrongdoing conducted by the police officers. And the sergeant walked up to him and asked him to remove his vehicle from the red line. He just showed up and parked in red. And as I'm talking to the sergeant, I said, "What's up with this picture?" So he walked up to him, and I didn't hear the whole conversation, but what I heard from the police officer, "Well, I'm standing here." And the sergeant said, "Well, you need to move it." So after he came back, after moving the vehicle, he did not have a smile on his face. He did not interact with anybody. But overall, the rest of the police officers were very pleasant. With one of them, who I observed not too long ago doing something wrong, and I complained to that sergeant, the officer recognized me and approached me and was very humble, very apologetic, and felt really bad about what he had done and explained himself to me. But I was very impressed with that officer and his interaction with me. And he's a very young officer, and he's only been with the department for 7 years. But there are so many things that need to change in the department, especially following the rules. And I would like to point out to Ken, the commuter lane, which is, I just busted one of his lieutenant in the commuter lane, which has been a problem for years. And I hope you're listening, Peggy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have is Josh, followed by Paloma. Josh, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you, Aaron. And thank you, committee members, moderator Webb. Appreciate everybody's time tonight and service. I wanted to add one little data point to the conversation of community engagement with an eye on building trust and rebuilding trust. I think it's important also for the Petaluma Police Department to evaluate its use of and policies around social media at all levels, both personal use by officers, just to make sure that we're not hiring anybody with ties to white supremacist or other hate organizations, but also just to look at the way the Petaluma Police Department uses its own page and the way it moderates comments on its pages, or rather doesn't, and allows that to become a really dangerous space for the community where there's a lot of hate and vitriol. I also want to note that in the use of social media, it's been observed that PPD has responded favorably to, not only been poor moderation, but also responded favorably to racist symbols like Blue Lives Matter. In the context of rebuilding trust, those are perhaps questionable decisions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker we have is Paloma, followed by Sarah. Paloma, and begin.
Thank you, Aaron, and thanks everybody. I know this is a long night, so I really appreciate you putting in so much effort and keeping going. So thank you. The first kind of comment I want to make is about a lot of the discussions in the beginning around policing and having police come to community events. I just I felt a little disappointed in the response. It just feels like so many times I've seen in city council meetings where police officers have been brought forward and said, this police officer volunteers with the community, they show up to these games, they do all these great things. And that's like widely supported and really like appreciated, and they get recognized and brought forward for that. But then in this meeting, you're talking about how police officers can't be in these community like areas without having a uniform and a gun. And it just seems like it would be great if we could ask police officers to volunteer their time off duty and out of uniform, and that volunteering could then be used in evaluation for promotion and recognition. So it's a volunteer basis, but it really helps them in their career and helps them with promotion. So they would have that incentive, and then they can show up with, as a normal member of the community and getting involved and making sure that people know them and have them be a big part of what they do all the time. So I would really love to see that. There was just a comment that kind of threw me off a bit, and it was said that we don't have parts of the town that are high crime, but then you said that our officers can't show up to a community event without guns because they might get attacked. And it just seems like we're framing Petaluma in one way or another based on when it's convenient. And I would really hope that the police could come to this with like a little bit better faith, a little bit more understanding of where we're coming from, because honestly, a lot of these things I believe should be done by the police on their own. And all of these people and all of the community are really donating their time and their energy to help you and to help the community work better. We're trying to make your jobs better. We're trying to make your jobs easier. And it just seems like the kind of thing where this should be seen as like an awesome resource by all these people, and really I was just a little disappointed. The other thing is that I know the rabbi mentioned that religion would be a great way to bring community engagement, but I just would really love it if the group would keep in mind that religion can be a source of trauma for a lot of marginalized communities, specifically the queer and trans communities. I know many people in Sonoma County who have had very traumatizing experiences with the local religious communities, and that may not be the intention, but I'd just like to keep in mind that that's not going to be a universal benefit. So we need to have a holistic view of this. Again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker that we have is Sarah, followed by Delia. Sarah, and I'll allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah. Pronouns she, her, ella, them, they, ella. Thank you all so much for your time and all of your voices and the work that you do. I want to just make clear so many things that you all have said is so thorough and so wonderful, that in order to move forward, we need to move forward at the speed of trust, and that is slow and it takes time through intentional acts. Some of those acts can include things such as community engagement that is a connection between all sectors of the leadership, such that is happening right here, so that when instances of racism or discrimination happen in our schools, in our skate parks, on the trails, in parks that are adjacent to the schools and online, are addressed by all community members, and we have an aligned vision that's moving forward. So I think it's really important that each of these individual silos of leadership come together that can stay separate enough not to crowd one another, but be aligned enough to maintain a shared direction and cohesive enough that we may be able to work with one another and respond to the needs of our community. I also heard over and again that we need to have people who represent our community be the ones who are leading our community. It is also really vital that in this leadership and in this diverse leadership and engagement, that we have ongoing support and mentorship and removals of those barriers to entry, as well as support while in those positions that include affinity groups, coaching, and mentoring for our youth to be able to get into these positions, but also those who are in the positions who are dealing within the systemic racism that they are then leading. It's important, very important, that we have this committee not just be ad hoc, something that is happening in the fact that this is a long-term challenge that we have and will continue to have, that we have ongoing accountability committee within our community that is made up of all the different pillars of leadership that are working together to address these issues, and that we are vigilantly self-aware of what's happening, so that those people who are leading, and we change from the inside out. I was speaking with one of these wonderful members, and they said that we need to engage from the inside out with building that infrastructure to sustain that change. And that includes active policies and funding that address the equity issues in our health system, in our education system, housing, policing, parks and rec, and art via funding and decision-making models. It is important that all of our public servants receive ongoing training that can respond to with trauma-informed care to mitigate physical and mental emotional impacts of the toxic stress. Lastly, I would love the city really quickly to sign on to the equity pledge that is going to be.
Sorry, Sarah, I had to cut you off. Your time has expired. The next speaker that we have is Delia. I will now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, my name is Delia. I'm a community member in Petaluma. I'm actually surprised I was able to attend this. I worked 12-hour shifts and was able to get off early from the hospital. So I don't have prepared comment other than some feedback from what I was able to listen to. And one of the things that I have long appreciated about Petaluma is its ability to celebrate, to come together as a community and to celebrate with practically outside of COVID times, every other weekend, some street fair, some festival. And in a way, it's almost as though there's a necessary rebranding to ourselves that needs to happen, where we begin to view ourselves as a very diverse community, where we begin to really perceive ourselves as inclusive, and that allows for seeing faces that are different than what we've seen in the past, and really bringing them to the forefront to listen to voices, see faces, hear stories that, quite frankly, have just not been center stage. And in the same way that we do have the Egg and Butter Days festival and parade, and we have the Rivertown Revival. You know, there's a great love of all things old-timey in Petaluma, but I wonder how much of that is really inclusive of all of the ethnicities who live in our area, all of the cultures that have made up the people who live here. And so I personally would really, really support the birth of some kind of new celebration, festival, fair, parade, you know, going forward, where that is what is center stage. The voices, the faces, the cultures of all the people that actually make up our town, and that there be a theme of inclusivity, and probably a lot of education that would come with that. But I feel like we really need to celebrate ourselves, not like a branded image of ourselves, but actually, in truth, who we are, the people who actually comprise this town. And I feel like that would be a very positive step forward in community building, especially as it regards diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tracy, at this point, there are no other hands raised, and we can officially close public comment.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, so we're 10 minutes beyond, and I'm sorry. My goal was not to land the plane at 9. I'm sorry, but we needed to hear from the public. So just to remind you, I will take your comments and sort them. It'll be really transparent. We'll do an affinity diagram, you know, where we're grouping like comments, make sure that you all agree, or if we need to move things around, I'll figure out a methodology to do this virtually, which I hate. If we were in a room together, this is so much, you know, it's so much more fun and physical. You know, we can't do that. So we'll figure it out. And then we will figure out next time the 3 ideas that we want to put forth, and 3 recommendations and SMART goals for the council. That will be our goal. You all see that this work, it's painstaking sometimes, because we have to capture everyone's voice. As critical, I wouldn't participate in this if we weren't capturing everyone's voice. So thank you for being patient and being so participatory. You all are wonderful. It's my honor to work with you. And I have one request: stay safe. Be careful. It's still a dangerous world out there. I'm confused. But you guys take care, and thank you so much for all of your effort. Are there any other closing comments that anyone else would like to make? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you.
We do have
Good night.
Zyra with a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Zyra.
I just want to say I'm always going to be an advocate for public comment, so I appreciate all of us. Again, we are public servants and we must hear from our community. And thank you to all the commenters for tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Zyra. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, thank you all. Be safe and great work. I know it's tiring. Go buy yourself an ice cream or something. I'm thinking of an In-N-Out burger. I don't know. Okay, you guys, bye-bye.
Thank you, Tracy.
Bye-bye.